What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Welcome to the show, gang. Little Friday action. Early start, 3 o'clock. Or a couple minutes after 3 anyway. Apologies for keeping you guys waiting. Looks like a fairly quiet chat so far, but a few of you guys here hanging out. Looks like a good slate to dive into. Big 11 gamers, so we had to get started and get right into things here. A lot of good pitching available. Some significant weather threats around the league. Some interesting spots for hitting. Best team in baseball right now playing at Coors Field. And I don't mean the Rockies. It's going to be an interesting one. Felt like we nailed the Rockies yesterday if anybody played that early slate. They popped up third on the stacks board. Wasn't quite comfortable with it. Ended up using some Rockies. Wrong ones, but I used some Rockies. But how about the Rocks putting up, 9 runs, I think, yesterday? Not bad. That one worked out fairly well. Didn't have a show yesterday with the early start time. Just wanted to focus on getting everything up and running, but obviously back at it today. And we'll have content all through the weekend as usual. Projections and everything. Probably won't be shows, but we shall see. There's some folks heading into the chat. Anthony Taylor's here. What's going on, bud? Kenneth Woodhouse, good to see you. We've got a solid little quorum, so I'll pull up the sheet. We'll get started. Whoops. I won't pull up the sheet. Got to share the sheet. There we go. We get started with this. We'll start talking Vegas lines. We'll start talking game environments. Start talking pitching board. By the time everybody else arrives, we'll be, a half hour into what'll probably be a 3-hour show. Let's be honest with each other. 3 o'clock, gonna try and get us out by 6. I'm actually going to try and make fairly good time. There are a few spots where I think we can kind of breeze through some things and optimize a little bit. But we'll see what happens. I appreciate all you guys. Hit the like button down there when you get a chance. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, and you get notifications about when these things start up, especially on days like this where the start time bounces between 3:30 and 3 o'clock like this week. Helps out a little bit. Shono says, need 3 hours of this to get me through work. I feel like we'll get you there, buddy. So, yeah, we'll kind of dive into things here. Oh, I was plugging things. As I've mentioned over the last few days, a little kickback information if you want it. It is down in the description of the video. Various channels through which to send things. But at some point, I do think in the next little bit, we are probably going to kick off a little bit of a subscription up on the site, as I've been hinting at for quite a while now. So as I've said, anything that comes in now just gets kicked toward that for anybody who sends anything in. If you want to wait on subscription, that's also perfectly fine. If you don't want any part of it, hey, I understand. Just hang out for the shows. I also get that. But looking at the Vegas board for this slate, also check out our pals over at AceMind, acemind.io. I got to always remember those guys. Got it right here. Subliminally feeding you the information about AceMind. But acemind.io, our sim partners, optimizer, sims. They've got product for MLB, WNBA, which is going on strong right now in our Discord. If you guys haven't checked that out, there's a couple of folks really talking WNBA pretty in-depth every single day in there. I'm not one of them. I don't really know much about the WNBA. I built a little model for it at the start of the season. We might get a little bit more involved once there are some more stats for everybody. I wanted to give it a little bit of a baseline since I didn't have any history built into an NBA model. But maybe we'll start doing some projections. But there's good conversation going on, and the guys over at AceMind have an optimizer, have a simulator for WNBA. They've got PGA stuff up there, I think. There's every major sport, and they're constantly working on more. If you jump over there, your first 3 days with them are always for free, and then promo code rotoscouts gets you, all in caps, gets you 50% off your first month. 20%, off your first month. 50% would be overly generous. All right. Let's take a look at some Vegas lines. Rangers and the Twins starting us off. Twins pulling in a fairly strong total at 5.05 going up against Jose Urena. One of the bigger totals on the board, but we do have some meaty ones to look at. On the other side, the Rangers, underdogs going up against Bailey Ober. Could be a sneaky spot to get to some Rangers bats. We all know that Ober can go bust, and when he does, it's usually in pretty spectacular form. Last time out, he gave up 5 earned to Cleveland. He had an 8-run start at the beginning of the year against what we now know is a pretty good Kansas City team. But there's also a lot of quality mixed in there. He typically pitches deep into games. I think he's on the board, sort of. We'll take a look at him. Only a 4.06 implied total for Texas. Next game up, the Brewers and the Red Sox. 4.54 implied total for the Brewers, 5.05 on the other side of that one for the Red Sox at home. Red Sox going against Bryce Wilson, Cutter Crawford on the mound for Boston facing the Brewers. Fairly healthy totals in a decent hitting environment in that game. 9.5 run total is the, third highest on the board? We've got a 10.5 in Cincinnati, we've got an 11 in Colorado, and then a 9.5 to work with. So that is a fairly healthy environment for runs. Neither one of those pitchers is invulnerable to giving up runs. Cutter Crawford has been pretty good throughout the season and also in the pitcher who's been working relatively deep into games. So he's kind of interesting, but definitely some expectation of run scoring in that one. Two good young pitchers going in the Giants and the Mets game. Christian Scott going for the Mets, Kyle Harrison for the Giants. Both teams relegated to relatively low totals. Hometown Mets at 4.34 or 4.35. Showing a little bit of power against Kyle Harrison, who's had a little bit of an issue with home runs here and there. Christian Scott, he's only made 3 starts, but he's been a little bit up and down, but very, very good strikeout to walk stuff in the minors. Supposed to be a very good pitcher, and in 2 of those starts, he performed pretty well. I think we get a decent look at Christian Scott here. Dodgers and the Reds. High total in that one, 10.5 run total there. The Dodgers second highest on the board at 5.80, only behind the Phillies at Coors Field, they're pulling a 6.53 in that one. Graham Ashcraft going for the hometown Reds. James Paxton on the bump for the visiting Dodgers. The Reds are pulling in a pretty healthy 4.83 implied total of their own. I think either one of those teams could get there for offense. Obviously, the Dodgers are pulling in heavy projections to one of the top-ranked teams on the board. That doesn't really change all that much unless they're facing an ace of aces, and then it only knocks them down a few pegs. In this situation, in this ballpark against that pitcher, makes a lot of sense that they're going to be very popular, and they're probably going to put up a pretty healthy run total. Orioles and the White Sox. This one might not play. This is our biggest concern weather-wise. Roth basically has it as it's not going to play. The Cubs and St. Louis game also looks a little bit rough. That next one up. So it's really right through this stretch that we've got to worry about. The Dodgers and the Reds is relatively clean. The way Ross reading it is a chance of delay, but probably okay. The 2 really concerning ones are Orioles and White Sox, Cubs and Cardinals. It seems like both of those are probably going to get scratched, if I had to guess, just from the way it looks. But again, I'm no weatherman, so obviously keep an eye on it and follow what guys like Roth and any other professional weather people say. But it doesn't really look good, which is a shame because Corbin Burns looked pretty spectacular at the top of the board going up against the worst team in baseball. Obviously, the White Sox, if that one does happen to play, check down well below 3 runs. 4.71 on the other side for the Orioles, and they look pretty good going up against Chris Flexen. The Cubbies and the Cardinals, that was Miles Mikolas, and we would lose another quality pitcher in that one if the Cubs game doesn't play. If the Cubs side doesn't play with Shota Imanaga, he's also one of the top-end pitchers on the entire slate, facing a fairly low-end Cardinals team, and he's just been spectacular to start his major league career. So it would be a shame to drop both of these pitchers. It would change the shape of the slate pretty significantly. We're going to see the pitching board in just a minute. This one has a little bit of potential rain in Colorado, but it seems like it's fine, and the wind is blowing out, and it's Colorado. It's the best team at baseball with the Phillies in town. Definitely looks like a good spot for DFS. They're going to be super popular, I'm sure, going up against Ty Block. Christopher Sanchez going for the Phillies. 4.61 implied total for the Rockies. Little signs of life from them here and there. They're always interesting, or not always interesting, but they're always a little bit more on the board in home games because they do get the Coors Field bump in addition to having a little bit of talent in that lineup. That said, Sanchez pitching pretty well this season and definitely a little bit of appeal anyway. Didn't project out completely poorly for a Coors game, but I think there's better options. Guardians and the Angels, both teams pretty low end in that one, just a 7.5 total for the entire game. Logan Allen going against Patrick Sandoval. Seems maybe a little bit low. Both of those pitchers getting a lot of respect there. Logan Allen's kind of rounded into form over his last 2, and Sandoval's not bad, but both of those pitchers are a little bit gettable, and at least the Guardian side of that one, that is a good team. So I feel like that one's low, but I can also see where they're getting it. Astros and the A's. This is an interesting one. The 4.84 implied total. I could easily see that being above 5 in a realistic sense. If I had been guessing at where that line was, I would have guessed a little bit higher. The Astros going up against Ross Stripling. They're showing a bunch of power upside in that game. Kind of like them as a stack today. On the other side, Justin Verlander taking on the Athletics. He looks pretty good. 3.76 implied total for the A's, 4.84 for the Astros. Last two games, the Marlins at the Diamondbacks, just a 3.26 implied total for the Marlins going up against Zach Gallen, one of the top pitchers on the board. And if we lose that one and that one, then he's pretty clearly the top pitching option on the board in terms of projection, matchup. A lot of pieces come together in that spot, but he'll be crushingly popular in that case. 3.27 implied total for the Marlins, 4.32 for the Diamondbacks. Yanks and the Pods, low totals in that one. It's Braxton Garrett, by the way, going for the Marlins. Could make the Diamondbacks a little bit interesting. He's kind of scuffled in his first 2 appearances back from a long injury absence. But he's a good pitcher. We'll take a look at it. Darvish against Rodon in the last game. Keeping the run totals down for both of these teams. Yanks are still pulling their fairly high-end projections that they'll get against anybody, but the power's cut down a little bit against Darvish, and similar for the Padres side of things. They're still showing their usual quality, but cut down a little bit by the talent of Carlos Rodon, who is pitching fairly well, has gone 6+ in 3 straight. Looks like an interesting spot on both sides, maybe to talk about some pitching. Speaking of which, we could take this off. That green was just for the other day when we had those 2 games that were only on DraftKings. Wanted to remind myself which pitchers it was. Andy Melman's here. Andy, what's going on, buddy? Happy Friday back to you. As Michael says, hit the like button there, and we will get started. So, you can see, might lose that one. Seems pretty likely we're going to lose that one. 10-6 on both sides for Corbin Burns. If that game manages to play with the White Sox under 3 runs in Vegas by a little bit of a margin, just looks like a tremendous spot. Burns pitching fairly well. Strikeout numbers are still down overall for the season, but still a very good strikeout rate going up against the worst team in baseball. They just lost Eloy Jimenez again, out for an extended period of time as they're reporting. So just a disaster there. He cannot stay on the field. Just as they're maybe getting Lubob back in the next couple of weeks, they won't have Jimenez. So they continue to be bad, but that game's probably not going to play. Zach Gallen going to get up against the Marlins. You can see a little bit of daylight between him and where Imanaga is. Christian Scott, Verlander, Rodon, Harrison, all those guys. Little bit of daylight there for Gallen, and if he's gone off the top and then Imanaga's gone from the top of the heap below, Zach Gallen kind of stands even more on his own up there at 10-2, 10-3 across sites. I just think he becomes insanely popular going up against the Marlins there for good reason. Very good pitcher. Very good matchup out in the desert. Seems like a very winnable spot for him where he can pitch deep into that game. So totally get it. Think it's justified. Think you should have a big chunk of it, more so if these two aren't available. But if some of these guys through the middle go a little bit under-owned because of that, then there's some opportunity there. Christian Scott, I have to think, is going to get kind of popular at 8,200, 7,900 in a very good matchup against the Giants, where he could find some strikeout upside. Should not be too much problem getting to him price-wise on either side. 8,200 is very cheap on FanDuel comparative to all these other options. 79 on DraftKings puts him at like an SP2 level. You can get fairly cheap if you went down the board here. Pair him with any of these guys. Becomes fairly interesting putting bats together, especially with some expensive bats at Coors Field. Verlander against the Athletics makes a ton of sense to me. 8,600 is pretty cheap for Justin Verlander's upside against the A's. 9,800, perfectly willing to pay it on the FanDuel slate. Carlos Rodon against the Padres just has to keep on doing what he's been doing. He's been pitching, again, he's been pitching pretty well. So I think that's justifiably right around where it should be. Kyle Harrison, you get a little bit of value, 8,800, 8,500, a little bit of a salary value. Projects on FanDuel slightly ahead of Rodon. Other way around on DraftKings. But I think for the discount, very playable against the Mets. No reason he couldn't succeed. One of the top young pitchers in baseball on a talent level. Darvish against the Yanks. It's just the usual good pitcher against a good Yankees lineup kind of asterisk. At 8,000 on DraftKings, I do think Darvish is pretty cheap in that spot. So you get a lot of value there. 9,400 is a little bit more shaky on FanDuel where you get these other options. But he's definitely on the board for some shares, and probably more so if he's really underowned. Ober against Texas, bad matchup, good pitcher, rough spots here and there as I mentioned at the top, but again, another one coming in at just a good value price. 84.83 makes a lot of sense for Bailey Ober, even against the Rangers, and that's a team that he's got the talent to beat. They are very good, and even with Corey Seager's ups and downs for the start of the season, and a little bit of blips with injuries and stuff, they're still a really good squad. So it's kind of in the middle of the board appropriately. Definitely playable for those prices. Sandoval, I just don't love targeting that Cleveland team. We'll give him a look. Those are cheap prices, and he projects out just fine. But like I said, that total felt a little bit low for me. So maybe he's benefiting a little bit from a low Vegas line. I don't love going after that station to station with now a little bit of power in the lineup. Fairly low strikeout Cleveland team. Not ideal. 5,800 for Braxton Garrett on DraftKings is really, really cheap. I'm just noticing that. That's kind of interesting. We're going to have to look at that. He is, like I said, he is a talented pitcher. He made a bunch of rehab starts, so he's basically stretched out. He was a disaster in his first 2 starts back, but he went 5 1/3 in the first one and just 4 1/3 in the second one, but he faced 24 hitters, 23 hitters, threw a bunch of pitches. Getting a fully stretched out Braxton Garrett, even against the Diamondbacks team that does have talent, does hit lefties fairly well, and we'll look at that again, I guess. That's really interesting. Doesn't have to do a lot to succeed at that price. I don't know that it has that kind of value at 77 on FanDuel, but I think he's pretty playable there at that price. You're saving quite a bit. I think I prefer saving the 200 and targeting the Diamondbacks with Garrett, unless something's just actually wrong, than taking Sandoval at 200 more against the Guardians, despite how it projects out. That's an interesting conversation. Sanchez, like I said, doesn't project too poorly since it's Coors Field, 7,200. He's at least in the bargain bin on DraftKings. I don't know that you go there at 8,900 on FanDuel. Doesn't really feel like a fit, but this is at least worth a conversation. Cutter Crawford against Milwaukee has been pitching well. Could probably justify a little bit better of a projection than that. I wouldn't argue with somebody who had him in the higher 20s, into the 30s maybe even. Does pitch deep into games. Does seem fairly likely to get a bonus there, especially with the Red Sox drawing a pretty heavy win implied probability at the win. So Crawford maybe a little bit more ceiling than what he's showing in that median projection. Definitely on the board. 8,900 is a good price on DraftKings. 92 is fair on FanDuel. Allen, I really don't trust all that much, but he does seem like he's rounded into form. I liked him coming into the year, but he was just kind of a mess. We'll give him a hard look at 8,076. Urena against the Twins. Don't really like it. Twins showing some upside for offense. 67, 61. Not really. Paxton against the Reds in that stadium. Everybody down this end of the board is pretty firmly a no. I don't really see the need to go to Paxton at those prices. Bryce Wilson, really not much upside against the Red Sox, even at those bargain prices. Stripling is a big no for me going up against the Astros. They're showing a ton of offense on the other side. Michaelis in a game that's probably not going to play. Flexen in a game that's probably not going to play, but these two guys would be disasters if those games did play. Ashcraft against the Dodgers, block at Coors Field. No, thank you. So fairly clear-cut bottom of the board today. I would say cut line would probably be there. If you absolutely needed to work in another value pitcher, I guess it would be Urena, and you can make the cut line there. But I don't think there's enough upside to do that. I would just work with these guys. Michael Knack saying Grichuk going to be very popular. It makes some sense. Let's see what lineups we got real quick, if any came in. The Braves, that one's not on this slate. Austin Riley again out for the Braves. Now, of course, we got a bunch of lineups. If you're playing the earlier slate, Matt Manning was scratched and optioned to AAA by the Tigers, and Kenta Maeda starting for the Tigers now. All right. Let's dive into this one. First game up, Rangers and the Twins. So like I said, we'll take a look at Jose Urena right out of the gate here. He did go 6 in his last game, struck out 3, gave up a homer, but just that earned run. 4 hits, 24 hitters. 6 2/3 in the game before that at Colorado, I'll add. Gave up a homer, 2 earned on 6 hits, struck out 3, walked 1. He's just super low strikeout. The Twins do have strikeouts in this lineup. He could maybe find 5 if he manages to go 6+ again. He hasn't struck out 5 in a game yet this year. Handful of starts mixed with a bunch of relief appearances, but several bulk relief appearances where he's going 3 or 4 innings, throughout the season. Ultimately, it amounts to 38 1/3 with a 15% strikeout rate, a 3.29 ERA, and a 4.20 xFIP. You can see Stuff Plus, not a fan. Not really terrible for giving up power. Finds some swinging strikes, but doesn't throw many strikes. Walks a few too many at 8.1, but not tragic. In years past, the walks were higher in 44 2/3 over 10 starts last year. Strikeouts were lower. Same thing the year before. Jose Urena is not a good pitcher. The Twins have been a pretty frisky team for run scoring. You can see there's some pretty good projections on their end. I think it's probably a spot where we would rather grab some Twins bats here than take shots with Jose Urena. At 61-67, he is, again, the very bottom of the plausible board in my mind. I don't think he's worth the shares, but if that bought you something and you've just overloaded on shares of the other guys, or they're just too popular, like Brax Garrett at 58 and some of these low 7s, high 7s, maybe you go there. It's not much better than Bryce Wilson against Boston. On the other side, Bailey Ober, a much better option against the Rangers. You can see Ober, 47 innings over 9 starts, still carrying a 4.40 ERA, but a better xFIP at 3.64. He's really been stingy with the walks, 4.9% walk rate, just a 1.0 whip. He's inducing an 11.7% swinging strike this year. Last year it was 13.8. Year before it was 13.3. So presumably a little bit more upside if he finds that swinging strike stuff back to that level. The oddball is he's striking out 26.6% this season. Last year it was 25.3. Year before it was 22.5 on better swinging strike rates. His CSW is up a little bit with the dip in swinging strikes. Means he's throwing more called strikes, which is interesting. He's given up a little bit of power. He's a fly ball pitcher. 21-degree average launch this year. 20 call it over the last 2 years. A lot of barrels. Hard hits and exit velo fairly limited over the last couple of seasons. So that's what helps him. He's more difficult to square up. But when he does get squared up, the ball can definitely travel. Another pitcher where Stuff Plus doesn't really overly regard the full arsenal as like overly good. 89.60. You can see not far off from Jose Urena on the other side for the full arsenal. But Ober's a guy we've seen make it work over time. 3.43 ERA on 4.20 xFIP in 26 starts last year. 3.21 ERA with a 4.18 xFIP in 56 innings, 11 starts the year before. So it certainly has the talent to get through this Rangers team. Last time out he faced Cleveland, he gave up 5 earned. Like I said, that one was messy. 8 hits in 4 innings, struck out 4. Start before that at Toronto against a similarly somewhat stingy Toronto team for the strikeouts. 10 strikeout game. 1 hitter over 6 1/3, no runs. 7 strikeouts in 5 innings against Seattle. That team sucks. 2 earned runs in that one on a homer and 3 hits. 4 earned runs to the White Sox. That was a messy one. I know we had him as a high-end pick that day. Start before that, 7 1/3, struck out 8 against the Angels. He's been mostly good. A lot of the earned runs in his ERA are still coming from a meltdown over an inning and a third in his very first start of the year against Kansas City. He gave up 8 earned runs on 9 hits in an inning and a third. That still haunts his ERA a little bit, plus the 4-run game and the 5-run game. Every other game has been really good, 2 runs or less. So I'll take some upside Bailey Ober at 8,300, 8,400, but I think you should hedge with some Rangers on the other side of that. You can see the home run model is certainly getting a little piece of that big launch angle, all the barrels that he allows, the home runs that he's allowed over time. So I think if you wanted to just go Rangers without the Ober side of it, and where it's not a hedge and you're just targeting a gettable pitcher, I think that makes some sense. But I would probably take my shots with Ober and just hedge with some Rangers. If you're going that route, and both of these teams are in play for bats, by the way. The Twins have the higher run total, but we'll do the Rangers first. Semien and Seager, kind of obvious off the top, 54, 53, and 3,600 apiece for those two players. Despite any current season dips in production, pretty spectacular. Corey Seager up to 253, 346, 404, 152 ISO, 9% better than average for run creation. He's got 8 home runs now. Still making pretty tremendous contact in terms of barrels, which will play well from the left side against Bailey Ober. It's just we've had a little bit of a dip in the hard hit output, more back to this year's kind of rates. Doesn't strike out, does draw walks. Seems like a very good Corey Seager spot here, and the price is right for Seager. Semien's got 9 homers, a 114 WRC plus. Hitting the ball about like he usually does in terms of premium contact. Another guy doesn't strike out. He doesn't draw as many walks, or at least isn't drawing as many walks right now. So a lot of balls in play, a lot of well-struck balls from Marcus Semien. Josh Smith at 39-26, a playable part in combination with everybody else if you just want to cheapen this up. You can't go shortstop. You can, but you don't really want to go shortstop. So not an ideal fit in my mind at third base. He's been productive, 25% better than average over 173 plate appearances for run creation. 2 home runs, 278, 374, 11. He's involved. He gets on. He's just more of a correlated scoring play than he is a big run creator. I'd rather have Nathaniel Lowe in that spot. He's got a little bit more upside on a fantasy basis. Adolis Garcia, 5,500, 3,600 is cheap for this player. 12 home runs, 4 stolen bases, a 247 ISO. Creating runs 19% better than average. Fantastic contact. 10 plus in the home run model for all 3 of Semien, Seager, and Garcia. Kind of interesting. Jonah Heim, pretty good hitting catcher. 4,200 is not all that expensive for Jonah Heim on the DraftKings slate where you need to play the position. 5 home runs on the season. And so far the ISO is down a little bit, I believe. 117 down from 179, and the year before 172. So a little bit more extra base hit upside, a little bit more power potentially to come from Jonah Heim. The home runs have been there, 5 home runs in 175 plate appearances, about right. Nathaniel Lowe remains cheap, 2,800, 4,300, just 264 on the front end of the triple slash, but 374 average. Creating runs 16% better than average. Hasn't really struck the ball all that well yet. Hard hits are down a little bit in 131 plate appearances. Barrels have been down a little bit. But there's a ton of upside there for that player. Draws a great walk rate at 14.5% this year. Fair amount of strikeouts, but he's very cheap for his talent. Evan Carter, Travis Jankowski, Leota Taveras at the bottom of the lineup. Taveras has 4 home runs, 4 stolen bases. Carter's got 5 and 2, and Jankowski's got 1 and 2. All 3 of these guys can steal you a base, can hit you a home run. They're all cheap, but they're very spotty in terms of consistency. Not one of these guys produces regularly, but any one of them makes for an effective enough wraparound back to the top of the lineup for very cheap prices because of this multi-category skill set. So I think any one of those guys is in play if you're stacking up Rangers. Your priorities are 1 through 6, but the Rangers bats are definitely in play. On the Twin side, going up against the Lorena, again, they are one of the higher overall implied totals on the board. I feel like at their pricing, that'll probably make them somewhat appealing. You got a lot of fairly cheap bats here on both sites. So they're probably going to get fairly popular. Edward Julian in the top spot, 45-27. Let's see if we got this lineup, actually. Nope. I wish they would only do the pop-up notes for the games that are actually on the slate you've got sorted to over at Labs. And it doesn't look like it's on Underdog yet. So, Edward Julian off the top of the lineup. An up and down contributor, let's say. 204, 308, 388. Just a 184 ISO when he should have more power than that on a regular basis. Does have 7 home runs, 5 stolen bases. Has created runs 3% better than average. Makes fantastic contact. I say that he should be a better contributor because I think he's a very good player. Strikes out a little bit too much, but he draws a lot of walks. Should be getting on base more frequently than he does. There's probably some happenstance baked into the production for Julian. Let's see what his BABIP is. .280. A little bit of bad luck baked into the high strikeout production. But with the walk rate that he draws, at 12.4% this year. Last year it was 15.7%. Should be getting on base a little bit better than a 308 clip, but that's keeping him afloat. 204, he should hit for a little bit better of an average. But very good power bat for 4,500, 2,700 at the top of the lineup. Very interesting at second base. Trevor Larnach, 43-28, 3 home runs from the left side. Just a 136 ISO, but a 111 WRC plus. You can see all the run creation. That the Twins have been putting up so far. Average WRC plus right now for no gigantic samples, obviously, but a few hundred plate appearances for basically everybody in the lineup. On the average, they're creating runs 19% better than average. They've been good for run creation, and they are not expensive. Larnach makes tremendous contact, 54.8% hard hits, 9.7% barrels. That's why his ISO should be higher. It should result in more home runs. Very capable of driving the ball. Carlos Correa is striking out at just an 18.5% clip, drawing 13.1% walks, 44.9% hard hits, and 10.1% barrels. I'll take this season all year long from Carlos Correa if I'm the Twins. 4 home runs, a 188 ISO, creating runs 35% better than average, getting on at a 362 clip. He only costs $4,200, $3,200 for DFS purposes. Not a bad shortstop option. Kepler at 48-33. Up to 311, 368, 544, a 233 ISO, 4 home runs over 115 plate appearances. Looking great right now. It's one of the better stretches of Max Kepler in terms of the average and the on-base skills. Doesn't strike out a ton. Right now, its strikeouts are down from 21.6% to 16.5%. Putting very good bat on ball and has upside for a little bit more premium contact. Really like Max Kepler at 48-33. Jeffers for 5,200, 3,700. The most expensive hitter on the FanDuel on both sites. Worth it. 11.6% barrel rate. Matches exactly last year. Had more hard hits on overall last year. Has already hit 10 home runs with the reduction in hard hits for the course of the season. A 282 ISO. Creating runs 47% better than average over 173. Another player, just keep on doing what you're doing. The hard hits will come back. Byron Buxton back in the lineup. 4,600, 2,900. 3 home runs. A stolen base. 117 plate appearances. He's got a 107 WRC plus. He's fine. I don't know that he's ever going to be a superstar that he should be on talent, but when he's in the lineup, he's more than productive. Totally fine to play. Would rather have him up here somewhere, but you can definitely get him down there. Willie Castro has been very good this season. 4 home runs, 6 stolen bases, 117 WRC plus. Gets involved, has multi-category ability for 44-31, triple position eligibility on FanDuel. Kirilloff, another decent lefty bat who can hit the ball very, very hard. He's just at 203, 270, 374. He's the only guy in the projected lineup below average for run creation so far. But there is skill there, and it's another lefty thumper that you could throw against a pretty weak right-handed pitcher and then whatever comes out of the bullpen. And as we've always talked about, when you get all this pitcher with a very low strikeout rate, there's a lot of contact available there. So if you're going to give these Twins that much bat on ball, there's going to be some upside. And as these guys get lower on down toward the bottom, a bat like Kirilloff is not uninteresting down there for these prices, given the ability to make some contact against this pitcher. Jose Miron there to round things off, 3,300, 2,100. Very, very cheap on FanDuel. There's a little bit of value-based opportunity down there in him on FanDuel. Over 114 plate appearances. He's at 269, 307, 444. He's created runs 14% better than average. He's hit 4 home runs, stolen a base. Don't really get why he's so cheap. I feel like he should be like here, 25, 27, somewhere in there. DraftKings has it right, 3,300. It's about right. It's weird that he's this cheap on FanDuel. That's kind of interesting. If he managed to climb the lineup a little bit, then he'd get super interesting on FanDuel. Overall, probably Twins bats, Bailey Ober. Twins bats, Rangers bats, Bailey Ober, and don't really want Jose Urena. Cali, I did the first couple rounds when there were 2 gamers of NBA, and that I haven't been doing the most recent NBA slates. I haven't even looked if what the schedule is. Are there 2 games today? I don't like the ones where it's stretched over 2 days. What do we have today? Yeah, so it's just single games going forward. And then those ones where it's stretched over a couple of days. I guess doesn't really matter, especially since I was just throwing them up. Maybe I'll start doing them again. But I just haven't been projecting the one gamers. And also part of it was I was just away for 5 days. And that kind of coincides with when those switched over. So, but maybe I'll take a look. Brewers going up against Cutter Crawford. The Red Sox taking on Bryce Wilson here. Wilson, another bargain bin level pitcher. Last time out, 4 2/3 against Houston. Gave up just 2, struck out 3. 4 innings against St. Louis, struck out 1, gave up 2 runs. Had a pair of 6 strikeout games over 6 innings apiece against Kansas City, at Kansas City, and against Tampa Bay. Those were his only really 2 interesting starts of the year. They're the only 2 starts where he went even beyond 5. Completed 6 in both of them, gave up 1 earned run across the 2 starts. This is the end of April and the beginning of May. If you could get that version of him, and it's not terrible comps at Kansas City against those decent Royals and against Tampa Bay and Milwaukee, this is a better ballpark, but it's not completely off in terms of the comp. I guess that puts him on the board a little bit. Like you can see, compared to Urena, he does have a better strikeout rate at 19.9% on the season. He's walking more. 2.79 ERA, but a 4.58 xFIP. This is the real number. 9% swinging strike, but a 26.5% CSW. He's given up a decent amount of power. Last year, similar strikeout rate. Relatively similar power numbers. They've bumped this year in a small sample, but year before basically looks like what he's done so far this year. And that year he had just a 15.5% strikeout rate. So there's not a ton of strikeout upside. There are strikeouts in the Red Sox lineup, but he's not the best option to go get him. But if you were going to play Jose Urena, there's no reason you couldn't also play Bryce Wilson. So I guess looking at it, skipping over James Paxton in Cincinnati, I don't think that's there. I guess this is your cut line if we want to talk about the plausible cut line, like I said before. But really, I think it's more there-ish. We're here. I don't really like Urena. You can make a good argument that for 500 more, Bryce Wilson is the better of the 2 value bin pitchers. Urena saves you the $500. They're both pretty bad. They're both probably going to get beat pretty bad. Cutter Crawford on the other side, 8,900, 9,200. I think it's a fair price. He just projects out in the middle. But he's been pitching well, and like I said, pitches deep into ball games. Went 5 2/3 against St. Louis in his most recent game. Gave up just 1 earned, 6 hits, struck out 5, walked 2. The 1 earned run was on a solo homer. Pitched into the 6th in that one, but that was the first time in 6 starts that he didn't complete the 6th inning. Went 5 straight, completing the 6th inning. Went 7 innings in one of them. 4 of the 5 were quality starts. The other one, he gave up 4 earned runs to Tampa Bay on 7 hits, struck out 6. Struck out either 5 or 6 in 4 straight games. Overall, it amounts to a 23.8% strikeout rate with 7.5% walks, a 2.17 ERA with a 3.98 xFIP. Again, this is more, the realistic number. But a pretty good 11.6% swinging strike rate combined with successful strikeout numbers against a gettable enough Brewers team in terms of strikeout upside. He's been very good at limiting barrels, limiting premium contact, hasn't amounted to many home runs. Stuff Plus really likes his arsenal so far this year. There's upside for Cutter Crawford. Like I said, I think it's more reflected in there's a ceiling. There's an appreciable ceiling on what his median projection is, especially given the innings, the potential to get the bonuses, how much the Red Sox are favored in this game. So I think he's an interesting pitcher in this one. Probably going to be underowned. I do think you can take some Brewers bats on the other side, but it's not a mandatory spot. I think Crawford's good enough to get through him where you don't really need to hedge it. It's not like you're taking a bad pitcher. Probably a little bit more safety there than Ober against the Rangers. Ober's just cheaper. But there's upside here. If you do go to the Brewers bats, I'm sure they're going to be relatively low owned on the other side of a popular Red Sox lineup. Bryce Turang from the top. Let's see if we got this one. We don't have the Brewers yet, but we do have the Red Sox. So Bryce Turang from the top, having a good year. He's stolen a bunch of bases already this season. I think it was 18 before I flipped to the other tab. Good triple slash at 310, 365, 426. Really fulfilling his promise at this point. Has turned himself into a very good player. If he's back up at the top of the lineup, 14.6% strikeouts with a league average-ish kind of a walk rate. Definitely a lot of balls in play. Doesn't crush the ball when he makes contact. Capable of hitting the odd home run. 116 ISO, 2 homers, a 127 WRC+. Plus. Been terrific. William Contreras, definitely capable of hitting homers. He's got 7 already this season. He's stolen 3 bases to add to that. 190 ISO, 164 WRC+, Plus, followed by Christian Yelich, who's still tremendous. 306, 392, 553 over 98 plate appearances, 5 homers, 6 steals, creating runs 66% better than average in a small sample. Has never been bad, has always produced, has always been tremendous for hard hits, for barrels. Very, very underappreciated player at 5,500, 3,800. I feel like he's still a little bit cheap. Willy Adames, 49, 37, has 7 home runs, 8 stolen bases, 107 WRC+. Plus. Everything else is normalizing to Willy Adames kind of levels, but a capable enough bat, especially hitting cleanup in the mix of these other guys. Jake Bauers, first base and outfield eligible for 45.29. You can see very good for premium contact. Not a lot of average, moderate on-base skills, but there's power there for Jake Bauers. 242 ISO over 112 plate appearances, 5 homers. He's also swiped 5 bases, 126 WRC+. Plus. I'd wager that's, more than he stole all of last year. 5 steals this year in 112. Last year he had 3 steals and 12 homers in 272. 211 ISO. Joey Ortiz has been pretty good. 278, 382, 504, a 226 ISO. Also has 5 homers. Creating runs 52% better than average. They're getting a lot out of Joey Ortiz, who was like, when that trade happened, it was like, wow, that's kind of underwhelming return, but he's been good. He's been delivering what they saw in him, so good for them. Sal Frelick, I mean, he's not as good as what they traded away, but been good. Sal Frelick's been moderately productive. He's dead on league average for run creation at 100 WRC+. Plus. He does have 6 stolen bases. Everybody in this lineup runs. Every single person in the lineup has at least 1 stolen base, and that's Ortiz at 1. Everybody beyond that has at least 3. Churrio's really interesting at the bottom for 3,300, 2,800. If he ever gets going, there's so much skill there. 39.6% hard hits. He's got the strikeouts under control a little bit now, 27.5%. That's been dramatically declining lately. 209, 258, 324. Still hasn't really found regular production. 5 home runs, 7 stolen bases. You can see the upside for counting stats. He could go skyrocketing if he really hits his stride. Blake Perkins kind of cratered after his hot start. 228, 321, 346, 95 WRC+. Plus. Does have counting stat ability. Definitely playable from the bottom of the lineup if you're stacking this team up a lot. Priorities are in the top 6. But all 3 of the bottom 3 guys, if this is the version of the lineup that we get, pretty playable. On the Red Sox side, I think you definitely want to be targeting some Bryce Wilson. Again, Red Sox at 5.05, one of the highest totals on the board. Wilson is very, very gettable. You get all right, they're getting better with the price at 58 on Devers, 39 on FanDuel. So you get Raffy Devers for a slight discount, 11.21 in the home run model in the confirmed lineup. Tyler O'Neill at 5,700, 3,300. 11 home runs for O'Neill on the season. It's been in a bit of a decline. I won't call it a tailspin because a lot of what he does regularly has still been intact. Just a little bit of a dip, and it's to be expected over the course of a full season. Down to 248, 358, 525. Still carrying a 277 ISO, 139 WRC plus for the season. Does have 11 home runs to lead the team so far this season. Tremendous premium contact. Tyler O'Neill is very good. What we saw at the beginning of the season wasn't just a blip. It was a really hot start. Might normalize to like this kind of an average, that kind of a triple slash, but the power's very real. He's got a little bit of speed. There's nothing wrong with Tyler O'Neill in this spot. Top 3 hitters in the lineup: Jarren Duran, Willy Abreu, Connor Wong, all pretty affordable for what they do. Duran at 46.33, 3 home runs, 11 steals, getting on at a 339 clip. All these guys are good table setters. Average on base for those top 3 hitters is 357 right now. Duran's creating runs 20% better than average. Abreu's been terrific, 33% better than average for run creation while slashing 275, 357, 486. He's got 5 homers and 7 steals. Connor Wong continues to mash as a catcher, 5 home runs on the season. A 164 ISO's fine, 344, 374, 508. I do think he's overperforming in the triple slash, but the power's real. Very good at putting bat on ball, putting the ball in play. Doesn't really walk. Doesn't strike out a ton. So if I'm getting hard hit balls for a cheap catcher at 3,600 where you have to play catchers, 27 where you don't, on a team that has Dominic Smith at first base, I'm going to pretend that says first base, and I'm going to take Connor Wong more often than not there. Dom Smith at 2,300 across sites. Okay, if you want. These are the priority bats. You can see it by the WRC+. 62 plate appearances for Smith this year, no home runs. Sub Mendoza, 242, 241 on the back end of the triple slash, a .052 ISO, 34 WRC+. Does have a little bit of capability to put bat on ball from the left side of the plate. 46.5% hard hits 2 years ago. In a more complete sample, was pretty bad last year. Vaughn Grissom hasn't been good yet. 136, 164, 153, a negative 17 WRC plus over 61. Is a talented kid, does have upside. 2,400, 2,200 is kind of playable price-wise. If you're just looking for somebody to click in there, I'd probably rather take Grissom at second base for the cheap prices than occupy first base with Dom Smith. Feel like there's a little bit more upside in that. David Hamilton, maybe a cheap, nobody's going to play him over those other guys kind of a move. It's just a weird cheap price pivot where maybe you get the day where he steals a couple bases or something and scores some runs, but a correlated scoring play at best. Ceddanne Rafaela still has 4-position eligibility on FanDuel, but he has really not been good over 179 plate appearances. Still playing basically every day. Still a kid that they like, but really needs to get his act together. Does have 5 home runs, 6 steals, capable of giving you accounting stats as a cheapo wraparound that, again, probably not going to be very popular. But the priorities are 1 through 5, and that's a pretty good 1 through 5 against a pretty weak pitcher. Red Sox bats, Cutter Crawford, Brewers bats. Bryce Wilson is only in the bargain bin, really only on DraftKings. Hamilton, Aaron Davis saying Hamilton has done better than 0 for like a week. Yeah, there you go. Oh, Cali, where were you? I was in Texas for 5 days. Traveling abroad sounds a little bit more interesting. So, yeah, I mean, like I was saying, Hamilton does have a 231, 296, 400 by the numbers out of these bottom 4 guys. He has been the best. Only 8% worse than average creating runs. He's got the top ISO out of the group. He's got the best triple slash, 2 homers, 5 steals. He's not completely dead. That's why I do think, for 25, 28, if you're looking like, all right, I need one of these bottom 4 guys to just cheapen this out and fill it out with the last man, he's probably still going to be the least popular because there's name recognition here, name recognition there, and prospect pedigree on those 2 guys. And then people remember Dom Smith and he's hitting higher up in the lineup for cheap. I think he's probably the guy who's the biggest afterthought in terms of the public. He's not necessarily good, but he has been a little bit productive. So if you're going to a group of players that are already not necessarily good and underperforming, then yeah, it does make sense in certain ways to take the least popular of those guys at a similar price. So I think that's where you get the upside. Giants and the Mets, 2 interesting pitchers going in this one. Let's see if we got the Giants lineup in. We do. Luis Matos back at the top. Lamont Wade, who we like, is in there. This is going to be one of those spots, I think, where it's going to be a little bit 4 cornersy. Probably least favorite corner of it is probably the Giants bats. But you can see they're showing a little bit of pop. 7.45 in the home run model for Lamont Wade, 6.75 from Matt Chapman. Jorge Soler is never going to go away at 9.40 in terms of home run potential. So it's not an uninteresting spot completely for the Giants. It's just there's gettable enough for strikeouts. 21.5% for this collection of hitters so far this year, but 25.8% for the same group last year. I think there's a little bit of strikeout upside. Christian Scott, over 3 starts, has a 23.9% strikeout rate. Like I said, when he got promoted, he was leading the minor leagues in strikeout to walk ratio. Pretty high-end prospect. Really like his arsenal on the mound. I've watched him pitch in his. I watched the first 2 starts. I missed the most recent one against Miami. But really just efficient mechanics on the mound, just looks really good and looks like he's going to be able to consistently throw strikes in the majors, consistently induce swinging strikes in the majors, even more importantly. And so far, that's accurate. 14.5% swinging is a terrific start to a season for a kid who's supposed to be a strikeout pitcher. So I think we've got a little bit more upside there. Hasn't really been walking anybody, so he's maintained that. Stuff pluses like the arsenal so far. He's run into a little bit of runs in his most recent start at Miami, which should have been a good one. 3 strikeouts, 1 walk, gave up a homer, 4 earned on 7 hits, only went 4 innings, faced 21 hitters. 2 starts before that, though, against Atlanta, he struck out 8, walked 2, gave up a homer, 3 earned on 6 hits, went 6 innings, faced 25 Braves hitters. Faced 25 Rays in 6 2/3 over his first start. Struck out 6, walked 1, gave up just 1 earned on 5 hits. Pretty good results. Price hasn't gone up. Decent enough matchup for my money. I like the spot for Christian Scott quite a bit today. Think there's a lot of upside here. On the other side, Kyle Harrison. He's made more starts. He started 10 times this season. Had a little run last year. 7 starts last year. The results have been mixed. 3.60 ERA with a 4.38 xFIP over 10 and 55 innings this year. 4.15 ERA and a 5.02 xFIP over 34 2/3 and 7 starts and a cup of coffee last year. Strikeout rate was a little bit better last year. The swinging strikes haven't really been there yet for him. Stuff Plus hasn't really liked the arsenal so far at the major league level. He's been a kid who was very, very successful through every level of the minor leagues. One of the top pitching prospects and probably was the top left-handed pitching prospect in baseball coming into this season. No reason to believe that he can't continue or can't find success in the right spots, but he's gotten dinged a little bit here and there. The home run numbers are actually normalized. 2.16% home run rate, but you can see there's a lot of hard hits in exit velo there. This was high over the first few games of the season. Maybe a little bit of happenstance where we're kind of floating in the middle right now, where we're showing some premium contact, but the home runs haven't been there over the last 6 games. He has not given up a home run. He gave up 5 home runs over his first 4 starts. He had a bit of an issue with home runs last year, too. 5.44% home runs. So like this, the first 12 games of his career, he had a pretty significant home run issue. That's really normalized of late, but there is still a lot of premium contact in the profile. It's where we're getting some pretty high-end home run marks for the top end of the Mets lineup. There's also just a lot of power there. So something to be wary of, but 85, 88, there's no reason to think that Kyle Harrison couldn't find some success here. It's just we haven't really seen the elite version of Harrison yet. We haven't really seen the super high-end strikeout total. Strikeout high of 8. That came in his 3rd start of the year against Washington. That was a good start. Gave up 3 earned on 5 hits over 6, though. Gave up a home run in that one. Struck out 7 in 2 straight starts against Pittsburgh and then at Boston. Went 6 innings against Pittsburgh, shut out 5-hitter. 5 innings against the Red Sox, gave up just 1 earned on 3 hits, but walked 5 in that one. It's like for every spot where you get something good, you're getting something okay, mediocre in return. 5 strikeout game, but 5 walks, 3 earned on 3 hits, 2 starts ago against Cincinnati. 4 strikeouts, 2 walks, 3 earned on 5 hits over 5 against Colorado in his most recent one. So there's been some blips. You could probably argue, given the results, that Harrison's maybe a couple bucks expensive compared to, say, Christian Scott on the other side. But I think he's definitely playable here. I think the projections are where it needs to be, and I think there's a bit of ceiling on that projection too. The Mets, not incredibly vulnerable to the strikeout, about 1 in 5. Francisco Lindor at the top, Pete Alonso in the 2nd spot. Both are fairly low strikeout, especially for their just gigantic upside on any given slate. Nimmo hitting 3rd now is kind of interesting. Lefty. Not going to sweat it too much. A couple of decent right-handed power bats. It's not an uninteresting Mets lineup. So again, I do think that this corner of this is in play. Starting up here, though, with the Giants, if we're going to the bats, I do think you can take some Giants against Christian Scott. That said, you're not going to get a ton of free passes from Scott in terms of putting extra guys on base with the walk. Might cap their upside a little, but they're a frisky enough team. Luis Matos, over 46 plate appearances, has been really good. 200 ISO, 140 WRC+, plus, 2 home runs, 311, 326, 511. Kid who they expect to be a decent hitter. Last year in 253 plate appearances, 2 home runs, 3 steals, 250, 319, 342. Definitely a playable outfielder for 3,400, 2,700 if you're going to Giants. Lamont Wade at just 3,500 on DraftKings, just 2,700 on FanDuel. Another one where I really don't completely understand where they're getting these prices from. Very, very good player. 20-point matching, 20.9% strikeout and walk rates this year. He had a very low strikeout rate and a very high walk rate last year. He hits the ball pretty hard and has done so consistently over the last few seasons. Right now, over 158, he's slashing 339, 481, 430. He's creating runs 73% better than average. He has not been completely blasting the ball in terms of home run output or ISO. The extra base hits are down. The home runs are just at 2 over 158 plate appearances. He hit 17 in 519 last year. He had a 161 ISO. So there is more power. There is more ability to hit for extra bases. Lefty bat against a righty making his 4th ever major league start. Lamont Wade's interesting and probably would be my top priority bat in a giant stack. Tyro Estrada for 38-31, capable of hitting a home run, capable of stealing bases when he gets on. Only getting on at a 275 clip is problematic for the base stealing, but he does have 8 home runs to tie Matt Chapman for the team lead right now. 101 WRC plus for Estrada, 117 WRC plus for Matt Chapman, who's still playing a tremendous third base. 5 stolen bases on the season is weird. 249, 313, 440, about where we expect him. Any given slate, major power upside. You can see the minor dip in premium contact, but at worst, that's baked into the price at $4,200 on DraftKings. 34 is maybe a little high on FanDuel, but it's not broken, especially with everybody else in the lineup cheap. Patty Bailey hits the ball fairly hard for a cheap catcher, 3,100, 2,800. He's at 292, 347, 461. Creating runs 31% better than average. 3 homers on the season. Jorge Soler stuck at just 5 home runs, a 152 ISO, but we know there's immense power behind that. Last year, 15% barrels, 48% hard hits. There's more to come from Jorge Soler, any given slate upside. Elio Ramos, 2,800, 2,700. He's at 296, 345, 463. Kind of like Montos, a kid they've been waiting for and does have upside. Very, very cheap for his what he's done with premium contact so far in a small sample. Was not good last year in 60 plate appearances, but definitely has a little bit of a sneaky price-based upside down the bottom of the lineup. Mike Yastrzemski, Marco Luciano. Yastrzemski, power for sure from the left side of the plate. Last year, 9.8% barrels, 44% hard hits. Year before, even better for premium contact. There's always going to be strikeouts. It was better last year at 26%, 31.4% so far this year. Premium contact is down a little bit in terms of barrels. There's lefty pop there. He's got 4 home runs, just a 136 ISO and 137. Hasn't been good, but is better than what he's done so far this year. Luciano, just a bolt-on part, 2,600, 2,300. That said, he's been productive over his 21 plate appearances this year. Last year in 45 was not very productive, but maybe a little bit of cheap wraparound quality. If you're going to the Mets, it's pretty straight line. You even get Marte in there. The bottom 3 hitters, Tomas Nido is mostly here for defense at catcher. He does have 2 home runs on the season. Is barreling the ball and hitting it hard in a very, very small sample of batted ball events, but we know that over time that doesn't really hold up. Nido is more of a defensive catcher. He does have 2 homers. Harrison Bader is slashing 281, 324, 360, a 101 WRC plus, 2 homers, 7 steals. He's capable of providing counting stats, getting involved for a little bit of correlated scoring here and there, but overall he's a relatively just another outfielder kind of guy. Jeff McNeil, contact-oriented hitter, 240, 312, 345, not really providing what he's supposed to be there to do, not hitting the ball at all hard or doing anything exceptional to make up for it. Does put the ball in play, 11.6% strikeouts, 8.4% hard hits. Difficult to strike out, but that's about all he's doing right now. Marte over 192 has been pretty decent, 5 home runs, 8 steals, a 103 WRC plus. The triple slash is not great. He could definitely stand to get on base more, but the price is right. 4,200, 3,000 for a capable veteran. Mark Vientos, 31 plate appearances. He's hit 2 homers, a 357 ISO is pretty immense. Very good premium contact so far this year, and that was the case last year in a bigger sample. 233 plate appearances last year. He hit just 9 home runs, had just a 156 ISO, and was well below average for run creation. But you can see what the premium contact look. Oops, this one. Still very good. Not quite JD Martinez, but still very good. 10.7% barrels, 51% hard hits. Vientos is a power bat, so this is pretty good delivery of upside. Hasn't struck out much in just 31 plate appearances. We'll see where that normalizes to. That's going to be part of the key for him. JD Martinez, tons and tons of power. He's got 2 home runs slashing 294, 333, 435 over 91 plate appearances, hitting cleanup 4,100, 3,000 in this lineup against the lefty who gives up this kind of premium contact. JD Martinez kind of makes a lot of sense. 8.84 in the home run model. Vientos at 8.91. Top of the lineup, you get Petey at 14.65 and Lindor at 9.72. The only guy not drawing a ridiculous home run rating up top is Brandon Nimmo, 4,600 to 33 for him. He's slashing just 220, 361, 405. This is still tremendous. The on-base percentage is feeding the WRC+. He's still a very, very good correlated scoring option. He has hit 7 home runs, so the power's been fine. It's just the production in terms of the average is down a little bit for him this season. If that comes around, another tremendous hitter. Lindor really hasn't rounded into form yet. I'm starting to get a little bit worried about those proclamations I was making about him not being far off, but I still think that's true. This is very, very similar to what it's been over the last couple of seasons. Premium contact. There's not a lot of difference in those numbers. The strikeouts are better. He's drawing us fewer walks, but he's striking out less, putting a ton of balls in play. Still hitting them pretty hard. He's only at 203, 274, 360, and 86 WRC+. 7 homers, 6 steals. At some point, I think it's going to click. Last year, 254, 336, 470. Year before, 270, 339, 449. Went 31-31 last year and 26-16 the year before. I don't think he's done. I don't think he's that far off. I'm going to continue harping on it. Mets are really stackable there. They're fairly stackable if you stretch for Starling Marte. And I do think any one of the, mostly Harrison Bader probably is your target if you're dipping to the bottom part of the lineup. These two guys are less playable. Playable in a lot of stacks, but deprioritized. Christian Scott. Mets bats. Kyle Harrison. Giants bats. Solid 4 corners game. Steve Leibowitz is here. I'm late. First beer's on me. Cheers, buddy. Little happy hour baseball to round out People's Friday. I love it. Hopefully some of you guys are already out at happy hour. I know Shawno is still plowing through the end of his workday. Dodgers, James Paxton going up against the Reds with Graham Ashcraft on the mound. Let's see if we got that Dodgers lineup in. Looks like we do. Probably no real significant changes for that one. Love the consistency of some of these teams. Dodgers, pretty much the same lineup every day. Yanks, top to bottom, is fairly similar most days. Got a lot of teams with a lot of wild cards. So I don't think we're taking Graham Ashcraft at 6,400, 7,600. Not in this ballpark, not against this Dodgers team. James Paxton, not really on the board for me at 8,200, 8,500. Just a 13% walk rate, 13% strikeout rate, a matching 13% walk rate. A 2.84 ERA, but a 5.43 xFIP for Mr. Paxton this year. 27 points below average by Stuff Plus. Not great. Ashcraft on the other side, you can see Stuff Plus actually loves his arsenal. 14 points above average. It results in just an 18.7% strikeout rate, though. 10% swinging, 24% CSW, walks a few too many, puts way too many guys on base, gives up way too much premium contact for my liking against the Dodgers team that I'm pretty sure we all know can go hit home runs in this ballpark. 45.8% hard hits, 91 miles an hour of exit velo, despite, again, what grades out is excellent stuff. Last year, with the same arsenal of pitches, 4.76 ERA, a 4.58 xFIP, just a 17.8% strikeout rate. If you could ever wrangle this, he apparently has the potential to be good, but this is not the spot to find out. Dodgers bats, big yes. Top of the board, Mookie, Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, all superstars. Will Smith at 301, 372, 472, creating runs 39% better than average. Mashing when he makes contact, doesn't strike out, draws a bunch of walks, has done over time. 5,200 is too cheap. 3,500 is probably cheap/effective. Definitely playable in conjunction with Freddie Freeman. You go first base and you go catcher, first base, and util with those two players. I have no issues with it. 3,900 apiece if you want to go top 4 stack on the Dodgers, though. On DraftKings, if you want to go top 5 and include Teoscar Hernandez, 5,600. That feels cheap. That's honestly, for that 5-man, that's not that crazy. 5680 apiece, so call it 57. You get Ohtani in there at 6,600, first and outfield eligibility, outfield only on FanDuel. He puts up only Ohtani, Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton. It's a very short list of guys who make this kind of contact on a regular basis. 13 homers, 13 stolen bases for Ohtani, 293 ISO, 202 to WRC plus so far, 102% better than average for run creation. Happy to pay the price tag. Mookie, 80% better than average for run creation, 8 homers, 9 steals, hitting 330, 430, 540. That's a fun triple slash to read. I'm going to do it again. 330, 430, 540. That's ridiculous. Mookie Betts is really good. Freddie's really good. 286, 395, 444. He's up to 5 home runs. Just a 159 ISO, but still creating runs 41% better than average. Doesn't strike out. Draws a ton of walks. Yada, yada, yada. Teoscar makes tremendous contact. He's got 11 home runs on the season. Over 215 plate appearances. On a lot of other teams, Teoscar is the star player. 51-34 in this lineup. He's just another guy who's, kind of affordable compared to some of the other stars. Gavin Lux, Chris Taylor, Andy Pages, Miguel Rojas from the bottom. 3,000, 2,500 is cheap for a player of Lux's talent. That said, he really needs to find that talent and engage it. 62 WRC plus over 141. Not really getting it done for us. Chris Taylor, this is probably the worst 74 plate appearance stretch of the last few years for Chris Taylor. He's better than that. We all know that. 2,100 at just one position outfield on DraftKings. That kind of sucks. 2,300 outfield and third base. This is a player that used to have more positional eligibility. Losing that flexibility for Taylor, that kind of hurts. He's just another outfielder at best, and I don't really like him at third base at that price. Not at the price, but just with what he's doing. Pages I like a lot. 2,900, 3,900 in the outfield. 5 home runs on the season, a 168 ISO, 93 WRC plus over 135. Take the power upside against Graham Ashcraft in this ballpark. He'll be less owned. He's less expensive than the top end of the team. Miguel Rojas at 32-24 does play 3 positions, key middle infield spots, shortstop and second base on the DraftKings slate. Obviously, you're putting him at second base over Gavin Lux rather than at shortstop over Mookie Betts. That said, Lux is less expensive, hits higher in the lineup, and is a lefty. I like that spot a little bit better. But Rojas, 261, 324, 35, creating runs 18% better than average. It's been contributing. On the Reds side, Stu Fairchild to lead off, very cheap. 3 home runs, 5 stolen bases, over 100 plate appearances. Productive enough for counting stats. That's what he's done in years past. Last year, 255 plate appearances, hit 5, stole 10. Year before, in 110 plate appearances, hit 5, stole none. He's frisky enough. I don't know that he's good, but he's frisky enough. He's made decent contact in his 100 plate appearances this year. Was moderately successful. Low-end hard hit rate, but an okay barrel rate last year. Struck out more last year. He's cheap. He hits ahead of Ellie. He hits of a suddenly springing to life, maybe. Jeimer Candelario. Up to the third spot in the lineup. 3,800, 2,700 is kind of interesting for Candelario, given his talent. 5 home runs over 178 plate appearances, few in the last couple of days. 186 ISO. Still not making tremendous contact overall, but if he's coming around, I do like the upside for a player who hit 22 last year and 576, 13 the year before and 467. There's a power bat there. Ellie stole his 31st base, I guess, yesterday or maybe the day before. 254, 345, 470 on the season at 215 ISO. The numbers have cooled in terms of the triple slash. The home run output has cooled slightly. The strikeouts are at 32.5%, but the walks are up a little bit. Needs to take a minute and look at his attack angle. Like I said on yesterday's show, somebody on Twitter was pointing that out. If he goes back to doing what he was doing over the first 150 plate appearances, the ball's going to start flying again. But he's a major, major contributor of fantasy points in any situation, correctly priced at 6,000, 4,200. Spencer Steer, 5,000, 3,000. Playable enough. 4 homers, 11 steals, a 105 WRC+. plus. Tyler Stevenson, 4,000, 2,700. Makes tremendous contact as a cheap catcher. Over 133 plate appearances, he's slashing 263, 338, 458, which is a little high. 195 ISO is very good. 5 home runs. And again, terrific contact so far this season. It was good for contact last year. It's not a total outlier. 4,000 remains cheap on DraftKings. Playable on FanDuel, given you've got Candelario, but he could go at third, so you don't necessarily have to occupy util and catcher first base. So playable enough part given the other positioning for other guys in this lineup. Santiago Espinal, 26-23, not really productive so far this year, 44 WRC plus. Nick Martini, 47 WRC plus. He's at least got 4 home runs and a 172 ISO. Doesn't really make regular contact. Everybody down the bottom of the lineup is cheap, but underperforming. 76 WRC plus for Jonathan India, who really hasn't been good in the last couple of years as we looked at. And then Jacob Hooterbus at the bottom of the lineup, has been at the top of the lineup. Now he's at the bottom of the lineup. Tells you all you need to know. Actually, it's probably the lefty that moved him down. 23-21, hasn't really done much in 19 plate appearances. Stolen base upside, if I remember correctly. Dodgers bats, gigantic yes. Reds bats, pretty big yes. Neither pitcher. Orioles, White Sox. This game is most likely not going to play. We're going to breeze through this one a little bit. For one, we weren't really going to focus on a White Sox lineup that lacks an Eloy Jimenez, doesn't have Luis Robert, and is facing Corbin Burns. If this game plays, or if it looks like it's going to play, Corbin Burns is spectacular. He projects out as the top option on the board, 10-6 across sites, perfectly willing to pay it against the worst team in baseball. Stuff Plus loves him because he's Corbin Burns. The ERA is fantastic. The xFIP is great. The strikeouts are down a little bit. Swinging strikes are fine to good. These are good numbers, but they're dipped a little bit for Corbin Burns. This is down a little bit for Corbin Burns, but he's overall been terrific and has the best matchup in baseball. Chris Flexen would be wildly unplayable against the Orioles. The White Sox would be mostly unplayable, even for contrarian reasons. Upside, you're going to get maybe 3-4 runs. The days they go out and put 10 on Corbin Burns and the Orioles bullpen are few and far between with this lineup. So contrarian only, super cheap, but that's about all you get. Not going to go through them player by player. Top options in the lineup would be Tommy Pham and Gavin Sheets and probably Paul DeJong. Everybody else pretty much sucks. On the Orioles side, if this game plays, Gunnar Henderson is a fantastic asset at shortstop, 61-44. He's got 16 home runs, a 323 ISO this year. Everybody in this lineup, except for Cedric Mullins, is creating runs well above league average. Actually, Anthony Santander is only 1% above league average, but he's got a lot of power. Everybody's been terrific so far this year. Adley Rutschman is a top catcher, 57-32. Happy to play him on either site. Ryan O'Hearn maintaining his production from last year. It's dipped a little bit. He's down to 269, 341, 462. Still creating runs a lot. Still barreling the ball fairly regularly. The hard hits are down a little bit, but the price has never gone up. He's still cheap. Still hitting third in this lineup, probably. Santander, Westberg, Kauser, fantastic hitters. Santander, switch hitter with a lot of power. 46-29 across sites, 8 home runs on the season. Westberg, righty, second base and third base eligibility on DK, 3 positions on FanDuel, 7 home runs, terrific, /133 WRC plus, got that job locked up now. Colton Cowser's been really up and down, but does have 6 home runs, a 218 ISO, 134 WRC plus. Back to tearing the cover off the ball over a handful of games recently, had been in a big dip after I called him up in the Dynasty League and started playing him every day. He decided to not be good after that ridiculous start. Now we're hopefully normalized. 16.7% barrels, 50% hard hits from him is tremendous. Ryan Mountcastle, 7.32 in the home run model. He's got 6 on the season, a 189 ISO. There's more power, more upside from him. Been up and down a little bit. Price is right, 46-3,000. These Orioles are not expensive enough. Game's probably not going to play, though. Cedric Mullins, 6 homers, 10 steals. The counting stats are really what we're here for, but he could hit and get on base a little bit more to help the cause. Same thing for Jorge Mateo. A little bit of power, a little bit of speed. We know that there are blips of production from Mateo. 99 pretty productive plate appearances is probably due to completely fall apart for the rest of the season soon. Orioles bats and Corbin Burns, if it plays, are both big yeses, but it's not going to play. This game, also probably not going to play. Seems a little bit more likely to, though. Miles Michaelis is pretty much a no against this Cubs team. Just too much contact. He doesn't really walk a ton. But he gives up power, he gives up premium contact, and he gives up frequent contact. 17% strikeouts this year, 15.9 over 200 and a third last year, 19% over 202 and a third the year before. He's not completely inept, but with the Cubs' propensity for getting on base, creating runs, being middle of the road strikeout, they're not egregiously high. A lot of guys are very effective at limiting strikeouts. Some of their better bats are very good at limiting strikeouts, like Cody Bellinger. So it's not really a team I like to target with better pitching than this. So I really don't see it from Miles Michaelis in a game that, again, probably not going to play. On the other side, Imanaga at 11,000 on both sides. Totally justifiable. If this game even looks like it's going to play, I think you can stick him into a lineup and then pivot off of it if it's going to get bad. The worst thing that could happen for him, though, would be a start and stop. You get like get into the fourth inning and then take a 20-minute delay, a half-hour delay. You might see them protect him a little bit. He has been pitching deep into games. He's a veteran guy who has pitched multiple seasons in the NPB, so not crazy that he's pitching deep and has been very, very good. I don't think anybody expected him to pitch to a .84 ERA over 9 starts. 3.14 xFIP was probably more within lines of expectation, but this is still very, very good. .91 whip. He doesn't put anybody on base, just 4.3% walks, 27.8% strikeouts on a fantastic 16% swinging strike rate. This is another one of those. He's been my poster boy for where Stuff Plus can miss when we're looking at the full Stuff Plus arsenal, because he's got a splitter that is like rated the best pitch or one of the best pitches by Stuff Plus. I think it leads the league in whiff, individual pitch whiff rate. I'm pretty sure his splitter leads the league. So that's accounted for in this, but this can be deceptive if you're looking at the full arsenal rather than on a pitch-by-pitch basis, because that is his key pitch. That's where the nearly 28% strikeouts come from, and certainly the 16% swinging strike rate comes from. So he's terrific, super high end. Eventually the ERA is going to go up. Hasn't really been gotten dinged for power despite being a fly ball pitcher. He's given up 3 home runs all season. Strikeout high of 9. He got there once. He got to 8 twice. He got to 7 3 times. Tremendous upside if this game plays against a scuffling Cardinals team. Cardinals bats really wouldn't be that appealing outside of some discounts around a still struggling Nolan Arenado, struggling Paul Goldschmidt, struggling Lars Nootbaar. Lefty is not ideal for him. That's not a great lineup to go to against this pitcher. Let's see if we actually have the real lineup. Doesn't look like. Aaron Davis says, as a Cubs fan, the Cubs are ice cold hitting lately. Since April 27th, the Cubs are hitting .201 as a team. Good enough for dead last in the MLB. It'll bounce back. It's only 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Monty, yeah, I think both Corbin and Imanaga end up not playing, and I think a lot of that popularity goes in Gallen's direction. That's why I was saying at the top of the show, he's probably going to be ridiculously popular up there once we get there. So he makes sense there, but a lot of these other guys are kind of in play if all the juice is going to him. The thing is going to be how many times you're combining him at that price with a lot of these guys at very effective prices. But there are options. There are ways you can, especially if you lose Imanaga and Burns, there are options to play that slate and not go Zach Gallen. I think there's enough upside. Thanks, Larry. Larry C. pointing out Milwaukee just announced they're going to have an opener. Koenig opening, then Wilson. Not going to impact anything projection-wise, really. We've already got the lineup unless the Red Sox make some changes. I don't think there's anything really worth going back for there. But I appreciate the note. It's always a good note. The one thing you do have to wrestle with that in that kind of a situation is what happens to the top of the lineup. Like the reason they go there. I assume it's Jared Koenig? Yeah. Jared Koenig is carrying a 13.4% strikeout rate over 20 innings. Well, that's certainly not the kind of pitcher I was about to warn against. That's a weird choice as an opener. He's been effective. He's got a 2.70 ERA over 20 innings, 13 appearances, 4.49 xFIP though. But just a 13.4% strikeout rate with a 4.9% walk. So there's going to be plenty of premium. There's going to be plenty of contact available to start that one. I don't think the Red Sox make changes for that. He is a lefty, but given all the contact that he allows, that he's not a strike-throwing lefty, really, I have no real issues with Jarren Duran, Willie Abreu from the top, Rafi Devers, obviously. And if memory serves, those guys have actually been pretty good lefty-lefty. Where is the qualifier? Hang on one sec. I want to see this. Since Larry cares, I care. All right, is it against lefties? Willier's taking a dip. Duran has been okay, but underperforming in terms of run creation. Small samples. So Willier over just 23 plate appearances, lefty. Has struck out a fairly significant amount, 34.8. Hasn't really gotten a piece of one. .048 ISO, 190, 261, 238 in the small sample. Duran is at an okay 249, 349, 259, but no ISO to speak of. Has drawn 11.1% walks. Stolen 2 bases, but just an 80 WRC plus in the split. Devers, he's actually underperformed too. It's maybe he takes the top off just on the fact that he is a lefty. That's why he's going to be out there to face 3 out of these 4 hitters. Connor Wong could certainly give him a problem. I don't think he's, again, with his low strikeout numbers, I don't think he's really a threat to do that. They would have to really stumble just because the guy is left-handed. So I think it's perfectly fine to consider the Red Sox just like they were looking already. So, as I was saying, if you go to this, if you're insistent on going to bats, I would probably go to the Cubs side. Somebody was just pointing out their underperformance in terms of batting average. And yeah, the collective batting average for this projected version of the lineup is just 230 right now. The on base has dipped alongside that to 317, but some of the key hitters still fantastic again on base. Mike Tauchman at a 370. You got a 349 out of Nico Horner. The on base percentage is down significantly for Ian Happ at 328, which is still fine. It's an okay on base, but that's down for him. 292 for Dansby is down. So yeah, you do have some slumping hitters here, but there's a lot of overall skill here in terms of getting on base and creating runs. The runs come with getting on base, right? So while I think it's a situation where, take a look at what that's done to the pricing, mostly on DraftKings, but they're down a little bit on FanDuel. I think it's a situation where if this game plays, you could certainly buy the dip on the Cubs pricing. They're better than what they've been over that stretch since April, whatever that was. If I was going there, Tauchman at 39, 3,000, correlated scoring option with a little bit of power from the top. Just get on base, help create runs. Seiya Suzuki makes tremendous contact. For a hitter that only costs 4,500, 3,100, he's a little bit more than just another outfielder given his contact profile against a pitcher who's going to give up plenty of premium contact. I do not dislike Seiya Suzuki in this spot at all. Cody Bellinger doesn't really strike out all that much, hits the ball pretty hard when he does, 8.5% barrels. That's up a little bit from 6.1. The 33.1% hard hits is up slightly. It was better several seasons ago. 7 home runs, though. He makes it work. 207 ISO, 113 WRC+. plus. Chris Morel at 43, 33, 8.58 in the home run model. Another player who hits the ball very, very hard on the regular. 9 home runs on the season, a 188 ISO. The ISO, the extra base hits down a little bit. The home runs over 206 plate appearances, not far off the mark. He hit 26 in 429 last year. Had a 260 ISO. The 260 ISO is what I'm looking for. But I think just with regular plate appearances, as long as he continues to make pretty good contact, that's going to come. Happ at 41.29. The price is way down with the underperformance. 218, 328, 324, 5% worse than average. Only 2 homers, 2 steals. Ian Happ is a better player than this. Nico still just stuck at 5 stolen bases. I don't know what's going on with him. Cubs fans can help me out with that. 257, 349. He's still getting on base, still creating runs at 110 WRC+. plus. 2 homers, 5 steals. Not really running as much as he has in the past. Michael Busch, 41.27. We know there's a ton of power from the left side there. 12.9% barrel still. 7 home runs. Most of them came in the first couple of weeks of his career, or the first couple of weeks of his season. Did he play? Yeah, he played a little bit last year. 203 ISO still. Upside for the price. Dansby, tons of upside for the price at 32.27. Not a great spot in the lineup. Has been struggling pretty significantly, but he's a better player than that. Miguel Amaya, kind of skippable at the bottom, does have 2 home runs, 182, 252, 283. They've been so bad, and this game is so unlikely to play, but if you're going here, I still would look like those 3, or 2 out of those 3. That would be part of the reason you're going there, is that those 3 hitters are pretty cheap for the idea of their talent anyway. Ivana Herrera has been pretty decent. 280, 351, 380, 115 WRC+. Plus. He's hit 3 home runs. He's made good contact. But you're not going out of your way just because he's in the lineup. 3,400, 2,500. He's a playable part, but not a ton of upside against this pitcher. Bottom of the lineup with Donovan, Pius, and Michael Ciani. Really not a lot there. Cards are very skippable, so is Miles Michaelis. Cubs bats if the game plays are on the board, but not a top priority. Shota Imanaga, if the game plays, would be a top priority pitcher. Speaking of top priorities, the Phillies are at Coors Field. Don't look now, but the Phillies are one of, if not the best team in baseball. Between their pitching staff, their excellent lineup. They have the highest run total on the board, 6.53. 11 run total in the game. Only, the Dodgers game is not all that far off at 10-5. A lot of runs on the board for the Dodgers too, but the Phils outpacing them. They're facing Tyler Black here. Tyler Black has an 11.4% strikeout rate over 21 innings. Just a 4.5% walk rate. That's pretty good. Stuff plus, one of the lower marks we've seen all year at 68.65. That's not very good. Oops, clicked on the wrong thing. 5.14 ERA, but a 4.37 xFIP. I'll give him that the 4.37 xFIP, maybe that's the real number. Still not good. Last time out, 6 earned runs over 3 innings at San Francisco, not in a Coors Field game. Actually pitched fairly well in his last 2 appearances at Coors. He faced Texas, went 5, gave up 7 hits, struck out only 2, but walked 0 and only 1 earned run. Start before that, 3 innings against San Francisco at Coors. Just 1 earned run, 4 hits. Oh, that was a bulk relief appearance. So in the bulk relief appearance, 3 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned run, 2 strikeouts, 1 walk. At Miami, in another bulk relief appearance, went 4, just 3 hits allowed, no earned runs, 2 strikeouts. Kind of a theme emerging here around the 2 strikeout games. 5 innings in a full start against San Diego on April 24th. He gave up 4 earned on 5 hits, walked 2, struck out 0. You really, really don't have upside available here. You've got a ton of contact going in the Phillies' direction. Kyle Schwarber, one of the top players on the home run board at 13.05. Bryce Harper, even lefty. These guys, it doesn't matter with these guys, and it doesn't matter against this pitcher. Bryce Harper, 8.94 in the home run model. He's got 12 on the season. Schwarbs has 9. Harper hitting 281, 395, 44 with a 263 ISO, creating runs 58% better than average, helping kids get prom dates in South Jersey. He's just been all over the place, 6,200, 4,600. JT Realmuto is having a good season. 285, 331, 461, creating runs 25% better than average. Hit 7 home runs already this season, hitting second on a regular basis. 54.38 is perfectly viable for him. Schwarbs is not overly expensive, at least on DraftKings at 58. 42 is up there on FanDuel, but this is a Coors Field game. He's going to be crazy, crazy popular, but it makes a ton of sense. Alec Bohm for 61.41 makes a ton of sense given the output this season. 323, 379, 519, and 196 ISO, 52% better than average for run creation. Crushes the ball when he makes contact with it. 45.7% hard hits is up. Barrels are up this year. It's resulted in a lot of output from him. Doesn't really strike out much. Not a tremendous walk rate. So again, a lot of balls in play and a lot of really well struck balls in play. Nicky Castellanos, 6.27 in the home run model. 5 on the season. Showed a few signs of life of late, but it's still been kind of mixed. Only 4,800, 3,300 has my attention, though, in a Coors Field game with this team. Helps pay for everybody else. It's going to make Castellanos pretty damn popular, though. That might be one to, even though he's appealing, might be a little bit of siren song in there, if you know what I mean. A little bit cheap. Player we know, player who has been more productive, was more productive last year. Hit 29 home runs and stole 11 bases last year. 204 ISO, 109 WRC plus. Year before had just 13 home runs, 94 WRC plus, 126 ISO. Couple of blips along the way over the last few seasons for Castellanos. I do think that he is a better player than these prices, but again, that's going to get everybody on him. That people know who he is, and he's that cheap with everybody else very expensive because it's Coors Field. So maybe he's the guy you decide to pivot around and if you're going down in the lineup, Bryson Stott obviously makes a ton of sense, but people know about him. He's no secret. 5 home runs, 13 stolen bases, a 129 WRC plus. The guys you're maybe pivoting toward are the other outfielders here if you're pivoting off of Castellanos. Now you're dealing with Christian Pache, not great, no real output to speak of over 48 plate appearances. In 95 last year, he hit 2 home runs and stole 2 bases. In 260 the year before, he hit only 3 home runs and was way below the Mendoza line. It's not a very good option in terms of pivoting, but you are getting away from popularity. The more appealing guy, in some ways anyway, is $3,600 Johan Rojas, $3,300 on FanDuel. He's only at 219, 262, 299. He's got a 60 WRC plus. He has hit 2 home runs, and what's kind of interesting is the 11 stolen bases. If he manages to get on, which he does not do frequently, he's got a little bit of speed to pad stats, and then you got to rely on the guys up top where you're wrapping him around to drive him in, if this is the lineup that we get. Let's see, did this just drop? Oh, Royce Lewis beginning a rehab assignment. Good for him. Man, there's a lot going on. Julio batting 6th for the second straight game. Jared Koenig opening. Dean Kramer placed on the 15-day IL. Orioles lineup goes Henderson, Westberg, O'Hearn, Mountcastle, Santander, Hayes, Mullins, Mateo, McCann. So some changes for the Orioles lineup in the game that's probably not going to play. Cardinals in their game that's probably not going to play. Looks like what we had in there. Bottom of the lineup is Burleson, Donovan, Gorman, Ciani. So I think Gorman sneaks in there. We didn't have him in there. But they remain pretty unplayable in a game that's not going to play. Rangers lineup looks how we had it. I think it's exactly what we had. Brewers lineup, think it's what we had. Yeah, exactly what we had. Diamondbacks we haven't gotten to yet. All right. Just moving on before we dive into some more of the discussion here. So the Phillies lineup top to bottom is, fairly obvious, right? Massive run total, 6.5 runs on the board, the best opportunity for run creation on the board. They and the Dodgers are both going to be extremely, extremely popular. But I do think there are combinations that you can utilize in this lineup. Again, maybe avoiding a really cheap Nick Castellanos is the key to keeping it a little bit lower owned in combination, because he's going to be a player that a lot of people use. It makes a ton of sense because of his spot in the lineup, because of his talent level at those prices in this game. You can even see it in the projection. It's right there. It's very obvious, but I think that draws the eye. So maybe that's one to pivot around, but he is very playable. Hopefully that made sense. On the Rockies side, going up against Chris Sanchez, 22.2% strikeout rate over 49 innings is pretty good. He's been very, very good at keeping the ball in the yard, just a 0.47% home run rate. I believe that's 1 home run on the season. Yeah, 1 home run all season long. That was in his worst start of the year. That came, unfortunately, against the Angels at Los Angeles in a game that I'm pretty sure we had him. 4 earned runs allowed on 7 hits, struck out just 1, walked 2. Gave up the lone homer that he's given up all season. Most recent game went 7 against Washington. 2 earned runs on 8 hits, struck out 8, walked 0. Pretty solid game there. 5 2/3, 3 earned runs, 7 hits against the Mets. 1 earned run in 7 innings on 6 hits against the Blue Jays. So the theme with Sanchez is a little bit that there are hits available here. There are some walks. You can see the walk rate's at 8.5%. That's not atrocious, but in a Coors Field game, it does matter. Giving up free passes at Coors Field and then giving up hits on top of that, even if there aren't home runs, it does tend to lead to some disasters. He projects out fine. I think he is playable at 7,200 on DraftKings. 8,900, I wouldn't touch it on FanDuel. Even with the depth of innings, even against this version of the Rockies, I just think there are better options for that money. You can see it in the whip. 1.45 whip is high. 3.31 ERA, 3.11 xFIP. He's managed it. He hasn't gotten blown up, but Coors Field can quickly contribute to that. Coors Field, everybody thinks of massive inflation of power, there is inflation of extra base hit upside in Coors Field more than anything else. It's a gigantic field. So you get a lot of extra base hits in the mix here. So it could ding him a little bit. At the value price on DraftKings, I have no issue. 7,200, he's in the mix. But the 89 on FanDuel is too high. I think you could take some Rockies bats against him. Again, they're pulling a 4.5 run total, 4.61. Outside of the top 2 teams on the board and the couple 5s, that's not far off. They performed yesterday for sure. That's not a reason to play them today, but there's a couple interesting bats here. Eloyers Montero is one of them. It's a 7.52 in the home run model. So Hunter Goodman at 7.41 with triple position eligibility on FanDuel, catcher and first base on DraftKings. He's very interesting. So far in the show, over 39 plate appearances, 12.5% barrels, 41.7% hard hits this year. Last year, in a handful of plate appearances, 77. He was at the Mendoza line. He hit just one home run, but he made pretty good contact on his batted ball events while he did it. A little bit of bad luck in there. 2 home runs so far this year, a 222 ISO in the tiny, tiny sample. He's a kid who's hit a ton of minor league home runs for them. Like the power upside for very cheap at the bottom of the lineup. Montero is another kid who has hit a bunch of minor league home runs for this organization. He's only got 2 in 157 plate appearances in the show this year, .090 ISO. Last year he hit 11 in 307. That's okay, a 183 ISO. There's some upside for power there. Again, Sanchez has not been giving up home runs, but he is giving up a lot of hits, a lot of well-struck balls, 40.1% hard hits, 89.4 miles an hour of exit velo. He's just good at keeping the ball down. 0.2 degree average launch this year, 3.9 last year, 4.9 the year before. So he does keep the ball in the park. That's factored into what you're seeing in these home run numbers. There's a little upside here. Jordan Beck is a rookie that they like. 76, not all that productive plate appearances. Does have 2 home runs, 2 steals, just a 17 WRC+. Again, I'll remind you, this is a bad team comprised of mostly bad players. But he's got upside. He's got upside. He's got upside. Brenton Doyle has been performing well. 5 home runs, 10 stolen bases, 273, 339, 442. Creating runs 8% better than average. I think he's actually just kind of good. 4,237, kind of high priced on FanDuel. 42 on DraftKings is no real investment at all. Especially when you're getting everybody around him cheap. Chris Bryant is back, sort of. The production hasn't been there at all over the last couple of seasons. He's been just completely hamstrung by injuries over the last few seasons, although, funnily, I don't think any injuries to his hamstring. 4,800, 2,800 across sites. He's very, very cheap for talent that I do still believe is in there somewhere. It's just you're taking a little bit on faith right now. Faith and ballpark and, not a great matchup. Elias Diaz, Brendan Rodgers, Ezekiel Tovar off the top. Rodgers has been okay, 262, 305, 348, but just a 72 WRC plus. Not really productive for counting stats. Tovar has been one of the best players on the team, 102 WRC plus, 7 home runs, 4 stolen bases. Diaz, 320, 358, 463, triple slash, and 4 home runs. A productive enough catcher bat in this lineup. No Ryan McMahon, which kind of sucks going up against the lefty here. Took him out of the lineup for platoon reasons, but some upside through these righties. All entirely right-handed lineup. The Rockies are on the board. Phillies, gigantic yes. Christopher Sanchez on DraftKings as a $7,200 value option. Moderate, lukewarm kind of a yes. Rockies as a contrarian play against that. Totally fine on either site. Just know that, bad Rockies team against a not overly gettable pitcher. But I do think there's, I do think there is walked a few too many. Gave up a couple of singles and some doubles. Maybe he doesn't get blown up for home runs, but string together some hits. It's just you're relying on a team that's not great at doing that. Guardians and the Angels. Logan Allen, Patrick Sandoval. This is a weird one. I don't really understand why the run total is just at 7.5 in this one. Is there a crazy wind blowing in that I didn't notice or something like that? Let's see. Like I said, coming into the season, I liked Logan Allen. I kept him on the Dynasty team for just $1 and just for this year. I've subsequently cut him from the Dynasty team because he was a disaster over his first handful of starts. Had one good start in his first 7 of the season. 8. He's basically made 3 good starts all year. 2 of them were the 2 most recent ones. He went 6 innings on May 12th against the White Sox at Chicago. I think we all know that that's pretty gettable. 6 hits, no runs, walked 1, struck out just 3, but at least booked a quality start, got the win. Faced Minnesota in his most recent start on the 18th. Faced 22 hitters, gave up 5 hits, no runs, walked 1, struck out 7. That's a good start. That's the Logan Allen that we had down the stretch last year where he's putting up some decent numbers. Before that game, he had a 6 strikeout game against Seattle, another very gettable team. That was back on April 3rd before we knew exactly how bad they were going to be. 6 strikeouts in that one, but walked 3, gave up no runs on 4 hits. Every other game this season, he's given up at least 2 earned runs with a couple of 4s in here, a couple of 3s in here, a 7 in there. He's been gettable for power. He's got 4 games where he's given up 2 home runs this season. I do think he's a talented guy. I don't know for sure that he's snapped into form like that just because of the results in the last 2. It was a tough stretch of teams, kinda, in that bad run. But I mean, it includes the Athletics twice. It includes the Tigers once. The Tigers were the team that hung 7 on him. He was okay against the Astros in Houston. He was pretty rough against the Braves in Atlanta. Gave up 2 homers in one of the Oakland games. Gave up 2 homers to the Yankees. Hasn't been really that good. That's how you get to a 4.91 ERA. 4.17 xFIP is fine, but a 1.44 WHIP. There's too many base runners, especially with just a 7.2% walk rate. It's not the walks that have really been problematic. Just allowing too many hits, 19.5% strikeouts. You can see all the home runs. They come in spite of a decent launch angle, not that many barrels. So it's just been when he's made mistakes. They've been bad mistakes, but his arsenal's been 15 points worse than average for by Stuff Plus. I don't really love it. I think Sandoval, oddly on the other side, is the better of the 2 pitchers right now. That said, I don't really want to take him with a moderate strikeout rate at 23.6% this year. Last year it was 19.6, the year before 23.7. So let's call it 23% overall. Going up against a fairly low strikeout Guardians team, 21.2% on the season. That includes a 38.6 over 44 plate appearances from Austin Hedges and a 25 over 8 plate appearances from Jonathan Rodriguez. I'll skip those guys. And now we get to an 18.1% strikeout rate, so that a little bit deceptive. Of course, that can be deceptive because Brian Rocchio over 156 is down from 31.4 to 17.3. That's either a really significant improvement for a player who's not shown any improvement otherwise, or it's just a weird blip. Last year's group, wait, taking Hedges out. I'll put Hedges in on that one. It pushes it up. Last year, 21.7 for the same group of hitters. So, relatively, I think we can agree, low strikeout. Very productive collection of hitters. A lot of good run creation numbers here. Some rough ones down toward the bottom, but again, some small samples down there. Brian Rocchio's more of a defender. But the top end of the lineup, very good at moving the lineup along, creating runs. A little bit of power mixed in there. You've got 12 home runs apiece for Josh Naylor and Jose Ramirez. Sandoval doesn't really get burnt for power all that frequently. Just a 1.84% home run rate last year on 9.3 degrees of launch. Year before, 1.25 on 11.4 limited barrels. It's back up to 11 degrees this year, 1.33% home run rate. He's gone at least 6 in his last 3 starts. 7 innings against Pittsburgh. At Pittsburgh, struck out 7, gave up no earned on 3 hits. Rough one against Kansas City in Los Angeles, and in 2 starts back, struck out just 3 walks, 0, 4 earned runs on 11 hits. I could see that kind of a game. No home run allowed, but 11 hits, 4 earned runs, only 3 strikeouts. Boy, does that sound like this Cleveland team. 5 strikeouts, 3 walks, a solo homer, 3 hits against Texas at Texas. Was pretty good in that one. Was okay against the Phillies. Struck out 10. That was his season high against the Phillies back on May 1st. 2 earned runs on 4 hits over 5. But needed everything he could get to get through those 5 innings and get those 10 strikeouts. Didn't get the quality start, and they actually lost that game. It's pretty pathetic. He's got a little upside. It wouldn't completely stun me if he outpitched this median projection and got into the low 30s on FanDuel, but I think that's about your upside. I like the Guardians to win this game, so I don't really like what the bonus opportunity looks like. Just maybe based on where Vegas has it, and maybe based on a little bit of ability on either side from these lefties, maybe we leave the stacks alone a little bit more than we might otherwise. Between the 2 teams, the Guardians are easily the more playable. Do we have confirmed lineups here? Doesn't look like. Tyler Freeman up to 219, 320, 363, a 144 ISO, 4 home runs, 6 stolen bases, playing center field every day. Does have a little bit of ability for 35, 3,000. Good spot in the lineup ahead of Andres Jimenez for 48, 32. Jimenez has 4 home runs, 7 stolen bases, a 107 WRC+. A little bit more power than that, a little bit more speed if he can manage to get on base more frequently. The price is right. He's never going to be a player who absolutely mashes the ball in terms of his premium contact profile, but he is low strikeout and he's also a low walk, so say it with me, a lot of balls in play. Jose Ramirez back to 6,000, 4,000. He's got 12 homers, 7 stolen bases, 237 ISO, 123 WRC+, looking a lot more like Jose Ramirez over the last 100 plate appearances. Naylor's been hitting the ball pretty well, 259 ISO, 12 homers, 247, 335, 506, creating runs 32% better than average. David Fry, 102% better than average for run creation, over 109 plate appearances. I'd wager that's the best stretch of David Fry's career at any level. 4,200, 3,000 across sites. He's got triple position eligibility on FanDuel. Of course, two of them are catcher and first base, which is the same thing. First base and outfield eligible on DraftKings. Nice little 41.3% hard hit rate. 5 homers, 3 steals. Been pretty good. 241 ISO. Gabriel Arias, 31-24. He's got quad position eligibility on FanDuel. Just 1 home run, just a 215, 240, 323 triple slash, and a 60 WRC plus this year. Last year, he hit 10 home runs in 345 plate appearances. Year before, he had 1 in just 57 plate appearances. But there's a bat there. Very good premium contact numbers last year in that small sample. 9.9% barrels, 46.3% hard hits. Strikes out a ton, doesn't walk at all. So a lot of well-struck balls in play. There's upside there for DFS for sure at the pricing if you're going to this team. Jonathan Rodriguez, I don't really know much about. Unless this is a Jonathan Rodriguez we've seen before, but I don't think it is yet. Iguez, come on. Shit, it's one of these. I'm going to guess he's the 2002. It's like that Simpsons joke where the 2 guys from the Civil War, after they're zombies, they get sent back. They reverse the zombie curse. This is an old Halloween episode. And you see like a pilgrim-looking dude and like a settler-looking dude go back to the same grave that says John Smith on it. I believe that's my grave. I'm John Smith. John Smith, 1882. And he points to the date that he died on. That's me trying to figure out these which one of these guys he is on Fangraphs. And Fangraphs also just went down, so it's just kind of stalling for time there. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Let's see if we can get to it. Still not working. Weird. I guess every show in the industry is right now looking up Jonathan Rodriguez. Is this the one? Here he is. This is the minor league MILB.com. In 156 plate appearances so far this year, presumably at AAA. At AAA. 7 home runs, 276, 389, 838. Oh, no, excuse me. 838 was the OPS. I was like, wow, that's a high slugging percentage. 389 on base, 276 average, 7 home runs. He hit 29 home runs in 2 teams in the minors last year at AA and AAA. 26 home runs the year before that, high A and AA. Seems like a bat. I don't know why I don't really have him on my radar that much. 2,400, 2,000 dead min on FanDuel. Kind of interesting. Hasn't done anything yet in 8 plate appearances, but if you're going to this team, not uninteresting. Austin Hedges, 2,100 across sites. A little bit of cheap catcher pop from Hedges, but it's very irregular. 44 plate appearances. He's got 1 home run, 1 stolen base this year. Last year in 212, he hit 1 home run and stole a base. Year before that in 338, he hit 7 home runs. You can see Sub Mendoza each of the last few years and no improvement so far. Brian Roche is a defender. If you're going to the Angels bats, Nolan Shanuel, good bat on ball skills, a lot of back control there, up to 244, 313, 356. That said, not getting a ton out of it. 92 WRC plus, 5 homers, no steals, moderate on base percentage, doesn't strike out, an okay walk rate. You do get that from a couple of these guys at the top. Luis Rengifo for 46, 3,000, does have a little bit of power, 7.01 in the home run model. He's got 3 on the season. He's also stolen 12 bases. Been one of their more productive players, 134 WRC plus. In 212 plate appearances, Taylor Ward has 10 home runs, a 121 WRC plus. Kevin Pillar, odd production from Kevin Pillar. 333, 395, 625 with 5 home runs over 82 plate appearances, a 183 WRC plus. I think we all know that Kevin Pillar is not just like a guy who needed a chance and is suddenly delivering. I think this is just a weird 82 plate appearances of significant production from him. He hit 9 home runs in 206 last year. And the previous seasons before that are not on the board here. Not going to go back for them because I know for sure that Kevin Pillar is not this good. He's okay. He'd be, he's capable of being a regular on some teams, but not that player. Logan O'Hoppe at their 3,900, 2,700, 4 home runs on the season. Pretty good contact profile. Cheap enough catcher going up against a gettable lefty. There's upside there. Joe Adell, there's certainly upside for power. You can see it in the tremendous premium contact so far. He's cooled off. He's got 9 home runs and 8 stolen bases, but we're down to 234, 302, 500 now over 140 plate appearances. Still a 266 ISO and a 122 WRC plus, though you're only looking for cheap home runs. There's upside from the Angels for sure. And you do oddly get a big stretch of players there now that have positive run creation marks. A lot of these young players have kind of been delivering for them given this opportunity. But again, Kevin Pillar, not really one of them. 77 plate appearances for Willie Calhoun, who is on that list. He's on like the older side of it. Never really delivered on his promise, as we've looked at in previous shows, but up to 311, 325, 473. Creating runs 22% better than average over 77 plate appearances. No real barrels, but does hit the ball fairly hard when he makes contact. Zach Neto, Kyron Paris, skippable-ish down toward the bottom. Neto does have 6 homers, 6 steals, 104 WRC plus. He's been all right, over 182, but we're kind of stretching it once we get to the bottom of the Angels lineup. Either pitcher from the bargain bin-ish at like mid-level prices. They're on the board. They're mixers at best, though. Neither one is a top priority. Sandoval's the probably better of the two options, given a little bit more strikeout potential, but neither one is overly appealing. Guardians bats over Angels bats, but the Angels are on the board for if you need a cheap mixer with a little bit of opportunity against Logan Allen. If you get the bad version of Logan Allen, these righties could definitely pound him. So that's kind of interesting. Joe Adell becomes more interesting if he climbs the lineup. Neto even would be more interesting higher in the lineup. It's not a completely dead Angels team. How many times have I said that? Not many. Only 454. Not doing too bad. 3 games left. See what's going on in the chat. Mom is saying, so you like Logan as much as I do today. I think, again, I wouldn't be surprised. I do think he's playable. I wouldn't be surprised if he had another good start. I do think he's more talented than what we've seen from him this year. It's just the numbers this year have been kind of rough. It would be a little bit both-sided. If you take a big position of Logan Allen, I would definitely want to hedge with some cheap Angels. And I think they make other things work, like Angels and Phillies probably works pretty well. So it's a path in addition to being a straight hedge. Logan Allen has enough talent to beat that Angels team and beat them handily and find a few strikeouts along the way. We've just only seen that version of Logan Allen like 3 times this year. And he was also an up-and-down pitcher last year. We spiked some upside. I liked his makeup. I like getting talented lefties in terms of the dynasty team, but it really didn't work out early. The Stuff Plus rating for him for the full arsenal is like 15 points below average. It's just kind of a know what you're buying kind of a spot. Duran over Castellanos to get different. It's just that screwy. I assume you mean Jarren Duran. It's just that screwy opener situation there that might diminish the Duran play a little bit, but that's not a bad pivot. Going up to a leadoff hitter with a lot of talent in multiple categories for a similar price, hitting ahead of a bunch of capable hitters, getting 3/4 of his plate appearances or 2/3 of his plate appearances, whatever it works out to against Bryce Wilson. Yeah, that's a reasonable enough pivot. It's not a straight line pivot, obviously, because you're going out of Coors Field. I might consider like who in the Reds lineup probably would be interesting in that sense. There's nobody that's really like a direct line comparison. You could save money in the Reds lineup and probably save some popularity there too. And they're in an interesting spot going up against Paxton in that ballpark with an okay total. But the Red Sox are a good source of potential pivots, and it's just the only reason for any hesitation on that, yes, is just the idea of that lefty opener. But again, it's a very low strikeout lefty. So I think there's going to be plenty of contact, and for a hitter like Duran who just needs to put the ball in play, use his speed to get to first base, and then go from there, and then the rest of the plate appearances are not against that lefty, I think you're doing pretty well. Oh, that's interesting, Larry. Larry's saying, saw this today, not sure what it's worth on Baseball Reference. When you go to splits, it gives you splits for home plate umpires as well now. Interesting. I don't really go to a ton of umpire stats or anything like that. I do think there are pitcher-friendly umps and hitter-friendly umps. It's just, it's one more factor that is difficult to quantify on any given day. Even Angel Hernandez gets some calls right. Obviously makes more bad calls than he does good, but a lot of it's wildly unpredictable. So I do think it's another layer of data that it's more something that like I could use to inform maybe tiebreak rather than injecting into a model trying to like extract math from. I think that's how that data kind of fits in. Astros look pretty terrific to me today. I really, really like the spot for the Astros, and I don't think they're as popular as they should be. Kind of buried the lead on the entire show. I think I'm going to stack some Astros here. You can see, for one, pretty significant home run numbers for some pretty significant home run hitters. It's going up against Ross Stripling. He's been okay at limiting premium contact, limiting home run output, but he hasn't been okay at limiting actual runs. He hasn't been okay at keeping guys off base with a 1.56 whip. Certainly doesn't have any swinging strikes or CSW to talk about. A 13.7% strikeout rate over 10 starts and 52 innings. Last year, 18.4% strikeouts with much worse numbers for premium contact. Year before, as a tiebreaker, worse numbers for premium contact, but a similarly limited home run output. I'm going to say that the premium contact numbers are about real on this side. The low home run totals are probably a little bit of happenstance. This was over 134 and a third. He's gettable for home run upside. I'm going to call it. These guys certainly know how to hit home runs. 17 already on the season. I believe that's your league leader, Kyle Tucker. 219 plate appearances. He's slashing 288, 422, 638 with a 350 ISO, 197 WRC plus. He's been ridiculously good. 6,400, 4,600. One of the most expensive players on the board. Totally worth it. 12.49 in the home run model. Jose Altuve has 9 home runs on the season. 17.2% strikeout rate, 7.2% walks. Everything's in play with Altuve. It's hit really, really well. He's stolen 7 bases. He gets on at a 348 clip to set the table for these guys. Individual play, upside correlated scoring play, upside play in stacks. Love Jose Altuve off the top. 134 WRC plus for him. Alex Bregman, 4 home runs, 2 stolen bases, just a 121 ISO, 25% worse than average creating runs. Price is way down at 4,400, 2,800 against a pitcher who is not going to be anything in terms of sitting him down. You just need bad luck to continue for Bregman, really, for it not to work out. He doesn't strike out. This pitcher doesn't strike anybody out. He hasn't been hitting the ball hard, but there is hard hit upside available here against a pitcher like this. This could be a good day for Alex Bregman. Could be another one of those, hey, maybe he's about to turn things around kind of a days like we saw a few weeks ago. Jeremy Pena at 45-33 has been terrific over 206 plate appearances. 326, 364, 461, 5 homers, 7 steals. I would say that this stretch is better than what he was doing 2 years ago when we thought he was good and was like, wow, they got a good replacement for Correa in there. 137 WRC plus. Been very good. 135 ISO is not great. He's not crushing the ball, but the 5 home runs are fine. Everything else, you'd rather have him doing this than hitting a ton of home runs and just not getting on base, not creating runs. So keep it up. Love it. John Singleton, 36, 26 across sites, 5 home runs. Cheap lefty power out of him. Playable. Not a priority, but playable. Jake Myers, 32, 27. He's been really productive. 302, 373, 528. Just kind of doing what we expected from Chas McCormick, who has not been good over his 86 plate appearances, but I like the upside for him if he's back in the lineup. Jainer Diaz has 3 home runs. He's cooled off after a very good start to the season. Still showing a nice number in the home run model, though. 9.31. He's been crushing the ball when he's made contact with it and was doing so previously. Doesn't really strike out. Doesn't really walk. Good bat on ball for 2,800, 3,800, especially on DraftKings as a catcher where you need to go to the position. Build him into stacks. He's not going to be at all popular. He's pretty cheap. Helps pay for these guys. Don't dislike it. I'd like it even more if he was hitting higher up. I didn't check if we had these. Doesn't look like. And then, of course, I skipped over intentionally the 3-hitter, Jordan Alvarez. I think you guys know by now he's one of my favorite hitters in the league. He's sitting at a 15.54 in the home run model. He's got 9 on the season, a 190 ISO, 125 WRC plus. The numbers are down a little bit. He's down from 18% barrels to heavy quotes, only 13.8% barrels. He's down from 52% hard hits to only 47.4. Those are bigger dips even if you look back 2 seasons ago. Still doesn't strike out much. Still draws walks. The walks are down a little. The price down at 56.39. You're getting a nice discount on Jordan Alvarez, who is not far off. And when he comes back, it is going to be with a massive roar. And him and Kyle Tucker are going to be the most fearsome 2-hitter combination, or seconds to Soto and Judge, or third behind Ohtani and Betts. They're right there with those groups of hitters. Those guys are tremendous. When you stretch it out to the 3-man and include Altuve, it's one of the top 3-mans in baseball. Love the Astros in this spot against this pitcher. Justin Verlander, only an 18.7% strikeout rate, a 10.1% walk. He's got a 3.97 ERA, but a 5.21 xFIP that's maybe a little bit of a warning sign. 1.21 whip is a little bit high. The walks are definitely high. The swinging strikes are down. The CSW is down. Last year it was 9.9 and 25.9. The walks are way up. That's been the problem. The strikeouts overall are down. The fact that Stuff Plus really likes what the arsenal looks like, though, is encouraging. He's given up some barrels, some home runs, but there's a little bit of happenstance in that. He's always given up some hard hits and the occasional home run. Part of that is a 3-home run meltdown against the Yankees 2 starts ago on the 7th. He gave up 7 earned on 8 hits, struck out only 2, walked 3, and the 3 home runs. Only 1 home run in each of the other games. He had a rough start in his most recent against Milwaukee, went just 4 2/3. Gave up a homer, 3 strikeouts, 2 walks, 4 earned runs on 4 hits. Start before that, though, at Detroit, 7 innings. Clean, just 2 hits, 8 strikeouts. Faced Cleveland in the start before the Yankees. Only struck out 2, walked 3, but only gave up 2 earned over 7 innings, 6 hits. The depth has been there. The talent is clearly still there. Like, as in the pitches are coming out of his hand effectively. Just some results have been a little bit mixed. But in one of the better available matchups going up against the Athletics, who he has checked to a 3.76 implied total, with some pretty good win upside on his end of the board if his team goes out and puts up the 12 or 13 runs I'm expecting from him. Kind of like the spot for Verlander. 98 is pricey on FanDuel, but he grades out just fine. 86 feels pretty cheap on DraftKings. Puts him easily in that mix of good mid-range options. If you take the A's, which not mandatory by any means, even if you take a big Verlander position, I don't think they're a mandatory hedge spot. But I think you could. They're cheap enough, and there is enough upside in some of these guys. I would take the 2 home run bats in Brent Rooker, who's been tremendous all season, and Shea Langoliers, who is incredibly spotty, but does hit for power when he connects. Outside of those 2, I probably want one of Abraham Toro or Zach Geloff. I probably want one of Tyler Soderstrom or Seth Brown. I'm less of a believer in J.J. Bleday up at the top, but I like the spot in the lineup better, and he's been performing. 201 plate appearances, got 7 home runs at 215 ISO, while the guys that I just named over 39 plate appearances. Soderstrom hasn't done much, but does have good lefty power. And Seth Brown over 134, 5 home runs, a 151 ISO, but was better last year. 14 home runs in 378, a 184. Year before, 25 home runs in 555 with a 214 ISO. J.D. Davis makes very good premium contact basically all the time. Hasn't really resulted in much over 107 this year. Moderately playable, becomes more playable if he climbs the lineup. Max Schumann, fairly skippable at the bottom, but has been productive. Just not a good spot in the lineup against Verlander. He's still probably relegated to like 3 plate appearances. He is very cheap, though. Triple position eligible on FanDuel is a little bit more interesting. He's hit 2 home runs, stolen 3 bases, created runs 15% better than average over 96 plate appearances. Putting decent bat on ball. The A's are okay. It's just not a killer spot. I greatly prefer the Verlander side. I greatly prefer the Astros side. Astros bats are a gigantic yes. Justin Verlander, especially at the 86 on DraftKings, is a yes. I think he's firmly in that mid-range. 98, you're paying a tax for it. You're paying like a matchup tax for it on FanDuel, but I think he's playable. Ross Stripling is a gigantic no. The A's bats, only moderately playable as a low-owned, contrarian, cheap hedge option with a little bit of power upside. Marlins and the Diamondbacks. We've got the D-backs lineup in. Pop it into the model. What do you guys got going on for the weekend? Anything good? Anybody doing anything crazy? Mama says, shh, don't tell them how I stack every day. Stay low owned. Who are we talking about? The Astros? Anthony Taylor says we should be able to hit like 10 times on legitimate concepts. Not sure what that's in reference to, Ant, but thanks. I don't know. I'm not sure what either of those comments is about, but appreciate them. Hit the like, the subscribe. Check out our pals over at acemind.io. Check out the description for a little bit of kickback info for your old pal here if you want. Emac's your old pal. I'm your young pal, obviously. All this gray in my beard. I haven't talked to Emac in a minute. I gotta ping him, see what's going on. See if they're in that new house that they bought yet or built, whatever it was. Anyway, Zach Gallen, top of the board, especially assuming that the Imanaga and Corbin Burns spots go bust in terms of rain. 10-3, 10-2 for Zach Gallen going up against the very, very gettable Miami Marlins. A lot of strikeouts on board for him. He's got a 26.8% rate with a 10.9% swinging. CSW down a little bit, 27.8. The stuff plus mark for Zach Gallen is kind of underwhelming, 4 points below average. But we know that Zach Gallen is capable of getting through with the arsenal of pitches that he has, especially against a lineup like this. Probably outperforming a little bit on strikeouts right now. Let's see, same group of hitters last year at a 22.8. So it's a little bit, they've been a little bit better for strikeouts so far this year overall. Man for man, you've got Jazz Chisholm clawing back 7 points of strikeout rate. De La Cruz a little bit higher, but he's been good. Josh Bell a little bit lower than he was. Jesus Sanchez significantly lower than he was. That'll be interesting to see if he maintains that. That would be actually a big step forward for him. If he's able to keep this with that, that's kind of interesting. I hadn't really clocked that yet, and it hasn't really resulted in much. But it will. Given the quality of contact that Jesus Sanchez makes, and I'm not talking about for today. I think we're firmly on the Gallen side. But that's one that I want to try and remember to keep an eye on. It's not that many plate appearances, 145. This could easily go back, and most likely will go back 6 points higher, 5 points higher. But even if he can maintain 20%, let alone if he can manage to improve on it, given the quality of contact that he makes from the left side, this will go up, that'll go up, that'll certainly go up, that'll go up, that'll go up. Makes it kind of interesting. Jazz is their best player, 4,700, 3,200 up top, 7 home runs, 9 stolen bases on the season. Creating runs 14% better than average. You also get Brian De La Cruz at 13% better than average. 175 ISO for Jazz, 179 for De La Cruz. He's got 9 home runs to lead the team. Josh Bell has 6 homers, but just at 232, 313, 363. The quality has really been spotty with Josh Bell. He doesn't strike out a ton. He draws some walks. He hits the ball pretty hard, but the results really outside of one season, a few seasons back, really disappointing, underwhelming in terms of power output, in terms of run creation output from Josh Bell. Jake Berger, a lot of power, but scuffling, 164, 202, 267, a 31 WRC plus, just a 103 ISO and 3 home runs. That's a pretty weak 124 from Jake Berger. Still maintaining an okay barrel rate, okay premium contact, but that's a big dip for him. So that's another one to watch. That's not great. Nick Gordon, 3,000, 2,500. 5 home runs, 3 steals, hasn't been good otherwise. Tim Anderson, it's amazing that he's still getting plate appearances. 2,800 dead min on FanDuel, over 135. He's at 209, 244, 233 with a 37 WRC plus. Otto Lopez, 29, 25. What did we find out about Otto the other day when we looked at him? He's got 3 home runs and 2 steals in 66 plate appearances with an okay triple slash and a 200 ISO right now in the show. I think when we looked at him the other day, it was more steals oriented than power, but forgive me that I don't quite remember from the bottom of the Marlins lineup in a bad spot. Nick Fortes, same story, bottom of the Marlins lineup in a bad spot. Little bit of tiny, maybe sneaky catcher power output. If you're totally committed to building 150 Marlins stacks, put Nick Fortes into like 5 of them and maybe you get a sneaky home run. On the other side, Braxton Garrett. All right, this is a tricky one. He's been a total disaster in his first 2 starts back. Faced the Mets, went just 4 1/3, 6 earned runs on 7 hits. did strike out 5, walked 1, gave up no homers. Struck out 8 in his debut of the season, went 5 1/3 against the Phillies, gave up a home run, walked 2, gave up 5 earned on 5 hits. I don't know the sequence of when those runs came. I'm guessing they came later in that performance, given that he got through 5 1/3 in his first start back. Like I said at the top of the show, did make a number of rehab starts, so it's basically fully stretched out. The fact that he pitched into the 6th inning in that Phillies game says a lot. Last year, Braxton Garrett, over 159 2/3, had a 23.7% strikeout rate, a 4.4% walk rate, both terrific, 3.66 ERA with a 3.42 xFIP, very, very good, 11.2% swinging strikes, and 30.1% CSW. Year before, similar numbers for swinging and CSW, slightly higher strikeout rate. In the tiny sample this year, we're up a little bit for strikeouts despite being down for CSW and swinging strike. Totally irrelevant over 9 2/3. But I think there's significant strikeout upside on any given slate for Braxton Garrett. I think he's a good, talented pitcher. 3.58 ERA with a 3.51 xFIP over 88 innings and 17 starts 2 years ago. Was reasonably effective at limiting premium contact and power. Last year gave up a little bit more in terms of hard hits and exit velo, but keeps the ball down by and large. Good launch angles there for limiting power. 3.66 ERA with a 3.42 xFIP. Again, no walks. 30 starts, 159 2/3. You don't typically get a ton of depth, but I think 6 innings is certainly in play. Quality starts in play if he's going well. The Diamondbacks, I threatened to do this earlier. Let's see if Fangraphs is back. By WRC Plus, the Diamondbacks have been the second best team in baseball against left-handed pitching with a 129 collective WRC Plus. They only strike out 18% of the time as a unit against lefties. They've hit 18 home runs and stolen 7 bases. Just a 172 ISO. They're not total mashers against lefties, but they've been very effective for run creation. They're also slashing 292, 347, 464 against left-handed pitching this year. So there's not a lot of strikeout there on the whole, and there's less against left-handed pitching. If you go to Braxton Garrett, know that you're doing it against a challenging lineup for a lefty to get through. These guys are good. As somebody mentioned at the top of the show, Randall Grichuk, probably pretty likely to draw some popularity. 2,300, 3,200 across sites. Over 79 plate appearances. He's been pretty good. 288, 316, 411. A 105 WRC+. Plus. Just 1 home run, but he's a guy who's hit 20 home runs in the past. Last year, 16 and 471. 19 and 538 the year before. I'll make a liar out of me. Randall Grichuk. He's got a 20 homer season in here, doesn't he? Which one is he? This is where we lose time. 22 home runs in 2021 and 545 plate appearances. Okay, good. I knew he had gotten there. I think he's done it a few other times. So an effective enough right-handed power bat from a veteran, just another outfielder type guy in the heart of the lineup, hitting 5th today. He's hitting ahead of Eugenio Suarez, who has not been all that good, but does still have tremendous right-handed power. Gabriel Moreno has not been very good so far this year, but does have a good young right-handed bat at the catcher position. 3,300, 2,400 against a lefty who may or may not be gettable right now. Blaze Alexander from the right side, 3,500, 2,500. He's hit 3 home runs, getting on at a 327 clip, creating runs 9% better than average, and has that rep as a decent, moderate, 15, 20 home run type power bat with the ability to get on base throughout his minor league career. Not totally uninteresting from the bottom. Kevin Newman is less interesting. He is at 276, 315, 429. He's hit 2 homers and a stolen a base. He's created runs in 111 plate appearances. I don't really think he continues. Last year in 253, he had 3 homers, 8 steals, and a 78 WRC+. 2 homers, 8 steals in 309 the year before with a 94 WRC+. So really not a very high-end option. Going up from Randall Grichuk, though, we get Christian Walker for just 4,700, 3,300. That DraftKings price is too low for Christian Walker. That's one of those red flashing bargain lights at Kmart, Walmart, whatever. Oh, they were blue. Blue light special, right? Yeah. 4,700. Too cheap. Look at the premium contact. That's all I need to know. 215 plate appearances of a guy giving me 16.3% barrels, 47.4% hard hits. Yes. All day long at 4,700 at first base against a lefty who, again, can certainly give them up. Christian Walker doesn't strike out a ton. They're up a little bit this year, but the walks are also up. He's given me a 257, 358, 458 triple slash with a 201 ISO, and he's created runs 32% better than average, and we're going to price him down to 4,700 against the lefty. What's going on here? Diamondbacks are really interesting. Diamondbacks and Astros is kind of an interesting pairing. Just trying to do it in my head real quick. Marte and Altuve is a conflict at second base. You can't get them on DraftKings, but you can on FanDuel second and second. Carroll's probably skippable. Christian Walker at first. Both the Houston outfielders. Either Suarez or Bregman at third, depending on which you prefer. Which one's cheaper is kind of interesting. You can go Pena at short and then Blaze Alexander at second, given the positioning on FanDuel on both sites. Oh, wait, you can't go second, though, because you've got Altuve there. You can go third with Blaze Alexander on FanDuel. That's kind of an interesting combo. I don't hate that. But continuing what I was talking about, Lourdes Gurriel, 4,200, 2,800, 6 home runs, 3 stolen bases, 242, 287, 384. Big dip in the triple slash after a good start. Does have power. Does have the ability to return that triple slash to respectability as time goes on. Corbin Carroll has been a mess. 191, 275, 282s. Back up to hitting toward the top of the lineup, 4,400, 2,900. For his talent level is very, very cheap. He does have counting stat upside for sure. It's just been really bad. Lefty, not ideal. What's he done against lefties? Let's see. Corbin Carroll for the season this year, 242, 294, 323 against lefties. Striking out 17.6, just a .081 ISO. Does have 1 of his home runs, 4 of his stolen bases against lefties. He's not dead, but he's tough. That said, it is a big discount. And then Marte's just been tremendous. 10 home runs, a stolen base, 231 ISO, 138 WRC+, 291, 339, 523, 54.4% hard hits and 11.3% barrels. This is a gigantic jump from what he's been over the last couple seasons for premium contact. It will probably cool off and normalize back toward these numbers, but it's a killer start. And he only costs $5,000 on DraftKings, $3,500 on FanDuel. Not a bad option. Braxton Garrett's in play at 58.77 for sure. From the bargain bin, especially here, this is worse because I don't know for sure that we're getting the quality start even if he's going well, just because, like I said, not the most efficient pitcher, does pitch a lot of short starts, even going back through last year, but does have the ability to get through 6. So he's not off the board at 77 on FanDuel, even for the quality start. At 58, you don't really have a ton of win equity with him, but that's a very, very cheap price. Get me 5 clean innings and hope for the best with the win. Maybe a few strikeouts along the way. It's just, again, this is a good lineup, and they're better against lefties, or they're very good against lefties. Zach Gallen is a big yes against the Marlins, but he's going to be super popular, especially if those other 2 pitchers scratch from the top of the board. Braxton Garrett from the bargain bin is playable for sure, particularly on DK at 58. Marlins bats, not really outside of a hedge position against the gigantic Zach Gallen share, or if you just want to get super contrarian, they're just not that good. Pretty rough spot. And then the Diamondbacks bats are a pretty significant yes, I think, going up against Braxton Garrett. And last but certainly not least, my New York Yankees taking on the San Diego Padres, in which would be a fun series. Aaron Davis saying Baltimore, Chicago weather looks fine to me. Not a weatherman, but 21% chance of rain at 8 p.m. Let's see if that's updated. It would be fun to have that. That was the one that our pal Roth was the most skeptical about. Okay, he lowered the risk. He upped the risk a little bit of in the Cubs and St. Louis game, and he lowered it a little bit in the Baltimore and the White Sox game. He's got them both still orange. Seems like he likes them both probably to go PPD, at least delays, which isn't great for pitching. But if they play, as I said, love the spot for Corbin Burns. Definitely think the Orioles bats are super playable. Love the spot for Shota Imanaga. And the Cubbies bats are probably a little bit playable. That one looks pretty weak, though. The White Sox one has improved. Still skeptical about both. Good call, though. Thanks for pointing that out, Aaron. Jackson Merrill is batting 8th for San Diego. It's not up on Labs yet. I'm not going to really sweat the lineup there, but good to know that Jackson Merrill's in the lineup. Always a good option. So Carlos Rodon, 9,200, 9,500 has been pitching pretty effectively. 3.27 ERA, 4.31 xFIP is this is probably about right as things normalize over time. But we've seen Carlos Rodon through the course of his career has been a very good pitcher. 23.5% strikeout rate with probably a little bit more room for more at 12.3%. Swinging, just needs to throw a few more called strikes. 6.8% walk, not bad. Last year was a mess, but if we get back toward like this kind of a level, we're probably not going to 33% strikeouts, but 26, 27 is probably in range. He's given up a lot of premium contact, given up a few home runs so far, but the stuff grades out really well across Stuff Plus. Still like him. I think there's upside. It's just not the best team to target, let's say. You've got a Padres team that's really, really frisky. They've got Luis Arias now at the top. He's up to 341, 382, 422 after a really cold start to the season. The trade did wonders for him, obviously, but he's just a tremendous hitter. You weren't going to keep him down for very long. 134 WRC plus, still costs just 4,300, 3,000 at second base across sites. Tremendous option. Correlate him with Fernando Tatis, Jurickson Profar, Manny Machado, Jake Cronenworth. All of those guys are easily in play. Arias has a ongoing multi-hit streak. He's good. I said he was good for 3 for 5 the other day or better. Easily good for a 2 for 4 performance with a walk against Carlos Rodon. I don't know. I think he's very, very capable of getting on base a few times and ruining Carlos Rodon's day. Tatis is cheap for somebody who hits the ball as hard as he does. He's got 8 home runs, 6 stolen bases, just a 164 ISO, but an 11.5% barrel, 48.4% hard hits, right in line with who he's been over the last couple of years. I like the upside for Fernando Tatis to get back on track. Profar, 4,100, 3,200, still cheap. Dude's at 337, 431, 511. At a certain point, we got to consider whether this is actually real. Still don't think it is, but strikes out just 13.9% of the time, 13.4% walks. Once upon a time, he was supposed to be maybe not this good, but good. We've seen blips over time, but never this sustained. Over 209 plate appearances. This has to be the best 209 plate appearances of his career. Keep it up. I wish him well. I think he's playable. 48-32 for a scuffling Manny Machado. Perfectly happy paying it. He's got 5 home runs. Still making contact really well. 9.1% barrels, 49% hard hits. Right in line with what he's been over time. Strikeouts are up a little bit. Walks are down a little bit. Some of the productivity fell into that black hole. I do think he's going to be perfectly fine when it's all said and done. Cronenworth, 42, 3,000 against a lefty. Drops a little bit in the lineup. Still very playable. 8 home runs on the season. A 189 ISO. Perfectly fine going to him. You guys can correct me on anybody who's not in the lineup. Jackson Merrill is going to be hitting down here somewhere. Campusano is playable, assuming he's in there, 37-28. Productive enough catcher bat for a fair price. Ha-Sung Kim, assuming he's in the lineup, 39-31. 6 homers, 13 steals. It's been a spotty season for Kim, but we know there's more ability than that. And the counting stats have at least been there for DraftKings, for DFS investment. Shortstop only now on both sites. Lost his multi-position. Still playable in this lineup. Still a 108 WRC plus, even with some struggles in the triple slash. Jose Azocar, I'm assuming that's where Jackson Merrill goes in that spot, roster spot wise. Merrill probably still has shortstop. I can just do this. 2,600 on FanDuel, still has shortstop eligibility, 3,600 on DraftKings. He's slashing 282, 326, 374, 105 WRC plus, 3 homers, 7 steals. Broke camp as an interesting prospect and has been delivering in his rookie season for this team. So pretty good option from the bottom of the Padres lineup. Pods are pretty stackable. Carlos Rodon's pretty playable against them. Not necessarily a hedge position, but if I got carried away with Carlos Rodon, if he's like very underowned, I would probably take out a little position of Padres. And I think the Pods are playable without the Rodon position. Yankees, always going to be at least playable to some degree. They rank out, I think, in the top 5 of stacks today. You're never going to be able to suppress the projections all that much. Yu Darvish comes in with a 24.9% strikeout rate, a 2.08 ERA with a 3.54 xFIP, just a 0.90 whip. Very, very talented veteran pitcher. Pitching pretty well recently. Has not given up an earned run in his last 4 starts. That was after a bumpy couple of starts there. He faced the Cardinals on April 2nd, gave up 3 earned runs. Faced the Cubbies on April 8th, gave up 4 earned runs in just 3 innings. Then faced the Dodgers, gave up 3 earned runs in 5. Took 2 weeks off, came back on the 30th, and he's been tremendous since then. The Reds, Faced the Reds over 5, no earned runs, 3 hits, 3 strikeouts, 5 shutout innings with 3 hits allowed, 5 strikeouts and a walk against the Cubs at Wrigley. 7 innings, 2-hitter, no runs, 7 strikeouts, 1 walk against the Dodgers, and then 9 strikeouts, 1 walk, 2 hits, no runs, over 7 against the Braves. Yu Darvish took a quick break and came back as the old version of Yu Darvish. 8,000 seems like a discount on DraftKings. 94 on FanDuel is probably about right. I don't think you're getting the same discount on him over there, but he is not a bad option on DraftKings. It's just you do have to get through this Yankees lineup. Collectively, this group is striking out just 19.5% of the time, but you do have some targetable strikeout rates. That includes a 24.1, which is an improvement year over year from Judge. Volpe at just 21.6 is a big improvement that might not last in any given slate. Could certainly strike out 3 times against a pitcher like this. But it does include a very real 15-2 from Soto and a 10-4 from Alex Verdugo. Both of those guys were higher last year, but they are legitimately low strikeout guys. Then you get Stanton with all the power in the world, but a very high strikeout rate. Rizzo, not a terrible target for strikeouts. Glaber's been a mess this season. It was 14.6 last year. We're up 10 points this year. And then Austin Wells is low strikeout. Ozzie Cabrera, fairly low strikeout. So it's not the best matchup in the world, but considering that he just blanked the Dodgers, the Cubs, and the Braves, as well as the Reds, there's no reason to believe that he couldn't continue the streak. Yu Darvish, over time, very good pitcher. Last year, a 24.6% strikeout rate, 4.56 ERA with a 3.92 xFIP. This was a, maybe he's reaching the end of the line kind of a season where the numbers were still not bad. The year before, 3.10 ERA with a 3.58 xFIP, 25.6% strikeouts, just 4.8% walks. He's always been able to induce swinging strikes, fairly good at limiting premium contact. No issues with it as an option whatsoever. Somebody was just saying it in the chat. Oh, I love you too, Steven Leibowitz. Oh, that's so nice of you to say. Most people express it by hitting the like button. Steven Leibowitz just telling me, oh, wait, you mean Darvish. Yeah, I got you, buddy. I do think it's a very good spot. Still have faith in Verlander. I'm with you there, too. Is it the slider, Lar? Yeah, I hadn't looked at it, but that makes a lot of sense. Darvish has like roughly 47 different pitches that he can throw. So he's always tinkering until he finds the right mix, which is what several of those starts just flat out looked like to start the year if you watched them. A lot of balls in the dirt, just trying to find his form, wasn't getting the swinging strikes. So it makes sense that if he just latched onto the slider and it's been working for him, it completely explains the uptick. And it was something, I think everybody basically expected. It's been a tremendous handful of starts. I don't expect him to not give up any more earned runs the rest of the way, but I do believe in the uptick since he's come back. Yankees bats, though, if you're going there, obviously the combination of Juan Soto and Aaron Judge is pretty tremendous in the heart of the lineup. Judge is up to 15 home runs now, 335 ISO, 186 WRC plus. Remember when he was struggling? Remember? A full month of the season looked like he was completely lost. Looks pretty good now. Soto, 13 home runs, a 251 ISO, 176 WRC plus. The guy who gets no credit, Giancarlo Stanton. 246, 296. I don't care about the front end of the triple slash with Stanton. 509 slug, 263 ISO, 12 home runs, creating runs 28% better than average, and always tattoos the ball when he makes contact. It's just the frequency with which this contact comes that is always the question. Does strike out at a 31.3% clip without drawing very many walks, but tattoos the ball. For his power upside for 4,700, that's too cheap. 3,300, that's also too cheap. He should be better. He should be more expensive. He is better than those prices. He's producing right now better than those prices. You buy in, you can put a 0 in your lineup any given day. I get that. It's not a player without just inherent risk anytime that you roster him. But he's also got probably, if not more, at least as much 2 home run upside in a realistic sense as anybody on any given slate. Verdugo's a low strikeout, contact-oriented hitter. He's been doing great in that cleanup spot, 4,100, 3,200 across sites, 113 WRC+, plus, puts the ball in play a ton, very effective at bringing runners around or resetting the table for the guys that follow. Rizzo for 44, 3,000, another player just with underappreciated power upside. He's only got a 135 ISO so far this year. The premium contact has dipped significantly, but this is a guy who's hit 30 home runs in multiple seasons throughout his career. That was like what he averaged throughout the first 10 years of his career. So maybe he doesn't get to 30, but he's already at 7 over 213 plate appearances. It's not completely gone. You're just dealing with a little bit of spotty output. Gleyber Torres for 36.29, again, has been pretty bad overall this season. He's got 3 homers, 4 steals, just a .084 ISO, 79 WRC+, 220, 299, 304, striking out too much, way more than he did last year, and a big improvement last year. I believe in the improvement. I believe in the player that we saw last year. I think we get back to something approaching that level when it's all said and done, but it's been pretty rough, but that's why he's so cheap at second base. Austin Wells, 13.4% strikeouts, 13.4% walks. That's really interesting, really tremendous. Capable of putting good bat on ball in terms of premium contact. Only a 195, 299, 293 triple slash with those numbers for avoiding strikeouts and drawing walks. Pretty weak, but does have more upside than that given that profile, and does have a little bit of power from left side. So if he's in the lineup, I like him better than Jose Trevino. Trevino's more here for his pitch framing ability and his defense behind the plate. Does have infrequent pop, but I prefer Wells if we're looking for DFS purposes. Cabrera, 3,400, 2,600, about to lose this job to DJ LeMahieu on a regular basis. Back down to 10% below average for run creation. Had a few nice spots, won the Yankees a few games early in the season. Thank you very much, Ozzy Cabrera. Why don't you go take a seat, kid? I think that's it. Ranking this one, that's tough. Let's take the discount. We'll give you Darvish the top spot. 8,000 on DraftKings at the discount. Give him the top spot. FanDuel, I'll go the other way around. FanDuel, Carlos Rodon gets the top spot at 95 versus 94 for Darvish. But that's a discount you can't really ignore on DraftKings. It's really good. Both pitchers are in play. Both lineups are in play. Yankees above the Padres just on overall upside talent, whatever you want to call it. It's not wildly disparate. It's not close. But the Yanks get the nod a little bit there. They're also really cheap. Outside of Judge and Soto, everybody in that lineup is cheap for their ceiling. Same thing is true for the Padres, though. Everybody in that lineup is pretty cheap, most particularly Luis Arias at the top. He's just absurdly inexpensive. You can one-off Luis Arias basically any given slate and just hope for 3 hits and 15 fantasy points and just take that at second base for the money. Until his price goes back up, he's always going to be in play. 535 on the nose. I think we're through this game. So this one was a 4 corners one. And we'll round things off again by looking at the pitching board one more time. Thank you, Monty. You have a great weekend too, my friend. Always happy to help. We'll be here all season long doing this. Like I said at the top of the show, you're probably going to see a little subscription pop up over the next little bit, next week or two on the site. Not going to try and break anybody's back. Do need to make some things happen. Right? So I think it's fair. We've been a year plus for free. We'll see what that looks like. In the meantime, kickback information's down below in the description. Hit up our pals over at AceMine. Use the promo code. That all helps out. We're going to keep it cheap. We're going to keep everybody here. Keep things rolling along. Hopefully get some winners along the way. But let's take a look here at the pitching board. So if we get Burns, we get Imanaga. That lengthens the slate. I think it makes all 3 of the top guys more playable. Obviously, 2 of them, if their games didn't play, wouldn't be very playable. But Gallen, it makes him more playable because I think some of that ownership would come off of him, spread to those 3 guys. Between the 3, Burns probably the best option against the White Sox, but he'll have a tremendous amount of popularity. Start and stop would be in play. That would be problematic. Same thing for Imanaga. He looks tremendous, but he's the most expensive of the trio. So Gallen maybe is still the quote-unquote safest from that high-end price pool. But all 3 of those options are spectacular if those games play. Christian Scott, I love the discount for the pitcher. Gettable team for strikeouts. Gettable team to keep him off the board. Go 6 innings. Get me some bonuses. 8,200, 7,900. Looks pretty tremendous. It's only his 4th start of his career. It could go bust, but he ranks out really well on this board. Justin Verlander, I'm buying in. 9,800, 8,500. I think he's much more playable on the DraftKings slate. It's an ideal opponent, though, for him to just cruise through 6, 7 clean innings. He's been giving us some depth. He's been shaky. He's been up and down a little bit. But the stuff is still there. I think the pitcher is still there. 98 is a tax for the matchup on FanDuel. It's a little bit of name recognition, a little bit of matchup tax on FanDuel for sure. But it'll probably keep the ownership lighter than some of these other guys. Carlos Rodon, playable. 9,500, 9,200 looks pretty good. Yu Darvish, 2 spots down. Basically the same projection for 94 and 8,000. Like I said a minute ago, 8,000 for Darvish is the most appealing out of those 4 spots. Then probably 95 for Carlos Rodon on FanDuel, 94 for Darvish on FanDuel. 92 for Rodon on DraftKings is perfectly playable, but it's not the 8,000 for Darvish that you're getting there. In between those two, Kyle Harrison against the Mets hasn't been great. The output has been mixed. The home runs started the season poorly, but it's been on a long stretch of not giving up power. I'm a believer in the player. I think the price is perfectly fine. I do think you can roll some of those. Competitive probably with the Bailey Ober spot, couple spots down going up against Texas for 84, 83. All those guys are right in the same mid-range of playability. I think any one of those guys through that yellow and orange stretch right here, totally playable. Patrick Sandoval, probably my least favorite option in that stretch just for the matchup against Cleveland, but he does have 1 in 4 strikeout upside on the right day. Braxton Garrett, given the Diamondbacks' skill against lefties and how bad Garrett has looked over to in terms of runs allowed, it might become a little bit shaky, but he's only 5,800 on the DraftKings slate, and he does have strikeout talent. He has struck out several hitters in each of his first 2 appearances. It's just tough opponent, tough spot, tough current form, but I think we do get 6 innings if things are going right. 5,800 is a great price to find out. Christopher Sanchez, not off the board. 7,200 is pretty cheap. It's just Coors Field, not great. I don't love it, but I think he's playable at the DraftKings price. At 89 on FanDuel, there's just other options. Just I don't think you have to. It's too cute, right? It's just getting too cute when you don't need to. Cutter Crawford probably has more ceiling than what this median looks like. 92.89. It's a good enough price. I think he can get up into this kind of territory for sure. This kind of territory. I forgot which one of these you guys can see. No, it's that one. All right. Logan Allen, playable-ish. 8,076. Needs to continue the current form. If he pitches like he did in the last 2 and like he did in spots down the stretch last year, could have a great day for 8,076. That's where I want to put the cut line, right? I would say anybody above that line is easily playable to justifiable. This starts to get really, really sketchy. 67, 61, it's just because the price is so low. But I think I'd rather take the shots at 58 with Braxton Garrett. He's just a better pitcher than Jose Urena. Paxton is a pretty firm no. Wilson is the other weird one. Now he's not even starting, though. So like 66 without the, or with less likelihood of the win bonus. I don't really love that. This is a firm no. I'm taking bats on the other side. Firm no / probably won't play. Firm no / probably won't play. Pretty firm no, although given what Stuff Plus thinks about him, maybe there's some sneaky ass upside there at 6,400. I don't really know. Don't really want to find out. Ty Black is a firm no. Jordan Alvarez still going to be the top of the home run board. He was the home run pick, by the way. I just went with what I think is a easy, clear-cut one. Pete Alonso not far behind against Kyle Harrison, drawing some quality from those Kyle Harrison blips for power that we saw all of last year and early this year. But again, Harrison's cleaned that up. I'm still giving up some premium contact, though. I don't dislike the upside for some Mets power. Kyle Schwarber and all the rest of the Phillies going to be insanely popular. Schwarber's is the only one above the magic number for home run upside. Coors doesn't necessarily equal home run upside or in like a super significant way in terms of how the model works. But tons and tons of run creation based upside and obviously power upside for everybody on the Phillies. They're all going to be popular. Aaron Judge, Kyle Tucker, kind of obvious ones off the top there. Both of those guys easily in play on most slates. Juan Soto, a couple of the other Astros, Jose Altuve's right there. Jainer Diaz right there. Even Bregman at 8.60 is right there. Really do like the Astros spot. And again, I think they're going to be a little under-owned today. Adolis Garcia from the Texas side. You also get Corey Seager there and Semien right here. So you got 3 guys above the magic number at the top of the Texas lineup. Makes them kind of interesting. Again, thinking about it in terms of the Vegas run board. The Twins, the Red Sox up 5+. You get the Dodgers with a monster total. You get the Coors Field game with the Phillies with a monster total. The Rangers showing a lot, though, on the other side of that game. Just a 4.06 implied total, but with those 3 players above the magic number for home run upside, I kind of like that. I like some other guys in that lineup for cheap prices. Nobody's talking to you, Alexa. Low, even Josh Smith, Jonah Heim, all very playable parts and some interesting bats at the bottom of that lineup. I think the Rangers might be an underappreciated stack against Ober, who, again, has been pitching well, is a good pitcher, but has the propensity to go bust in a big way. And when we're seeing the power against, kind of compelling. What else is there to talk about? Devers from the Red Sox lineup, never going to be under a pretty good home run mark, and that's not a bad one, 11.21. Tyler O'Neill drops down here at 8.04, but there's a ton of power upside there. Bunch of Reds kind of just floating below the magic number, 8.99 for Ellie, 8.46 for Mike Ford, 7.89 for Candelario, 7.51 for Spencer Steer. The Reds side of that Dodgers-Reds game is not uninteresting also. That's one that might go a little bit overlooked. Them at 4.83. That's not crazy far off of at least these two, and they're getting the benefit of that ballpark. One to explore for sure. That said, 5:43, 2 hours and 40 minutes exactly into the show. Has that changed? Michael Knack. Michael says, he like even more knowing that you're named after Bradshaw, lifelong Steelers fan. Love it. I think he's a member of the regular rotation right now. Colin? Urana? What does their rotation look like? They've got Evaldi and John Gray both on the IL. In addition to, obviously, DeGrom, Scherzer, Tyler Mahle, Cody Bradford. So they've got Heaney, Dunning, Lorenzen, and then Urena's getting this one. I'm not sure what they do from there. But yeah, I think right now he's going to get a few looks till those guys come back, but not a guy that they're going to rely on in any kind of a way. He's not a good pitcher, and I don't think they're under any kind of illusions about that. He's made, this is his fourth consecutive full start. Did go 5, then 6 2/3, and then 6 innings. So yeah, part of the rotation right now was pitching in bulk relief, largely bulk relief or long relief, whatever you want to call it, in games leading up to that. But at the very least for right now, part of the rotation. But more of a target than a pitcher to use. Jeremiah Johnson saying, I'm loving the Angels' right-handed bats. They've been raking against lefties. Yeah, that's, as I looked at it more, that was not an uninteresting spot. That was against Logan Allen, right? Yeah, just considering how, up and down, how shaky Logan Allen's been, outside of a couple good starts consecutively, he has been giving up some premium contact and some power. Stuff Plus doesn't love the arsenal. He's been gettable for runs. He's fairly low strikeout. Has had good games in his brief career. Has had some shaky ones. So, yeah, with some of the Angels righties in play, let's see what the actual lineup looks like. So, Shanuel, Renifo, Ward, Pilar, Ohapi, Adele, Calhoun, Cole Tucker, and Kyron Paris down the bottom of the lineup. So, Cole Tucker, no Zach Neto, I think was the only change. So, yeah, the Taylor Ward and Joe Adele, most specifically for me. It's probably like Ward, Adele, Logan O'Hop as the three most interesting players to me. And then I wouldn't shy away from mixing in Kevin Pillar for a very cheap price, given the spot in the cleanup spot. Renifo and Willie Calhoun are probably better on a talent basis than Kevin Pillar. I know Willie Calhoun's left-handed and Renifo's a switch hitter, but those two guys do interesting enough things with the bat. So that's not an uninteresting lineup to pursue. And I do agree the righties in that lineup are kind of interesting against Logan Allen. Wouldn't shock me if Allen pitches well, though. He's got the talent to get through what is a mediocre lineup overall. But I'm with you. Yes, Pilar has been mashing. We talked about it when we went through the team. Again, I would venture to guess this is one of the more productive 82 plate appearance stretches of Kevin Pillar's career. But he's a player that we have seen produce okay-ish offensive numbers over time. But not like he's a young guy that's suddenly like popping. 2 or more hits plus runs plus RBIs in 9 of his last 10 games. Yeah, a lot of production. It's all right here. No issues with it. It's just nothing really predictive about that. You know, in 206 plate appearances last year, he hit 9 home runs, stole 4 bases, had a 228 average with a 248 on base and just a 71 WRC plus. Only 13 plate appearances in 2022. He was hurt. 15 homers in 347 back in 2021, 185 ISO. 6 homers in the short 2020 season, but was good with the bat overall. Had a 106 WRC plus, one of his more productive years. 21 homers in 645 back in 2019. He's a productive enough bat. You know, he's no star, but he's certainly a productive enough bat. But this is probably, you could cherry pick 82 other plate appearances in his career, 82 other consecutive plate appearances, and maybe it rivals that. But that's going to be one of the top 3 stretches, let's say, of 82 plate appearances in the career. But keep it up. Definitely playable, and the price hasn't gone up, so there's nothing wrong with going back to it, especially if you're stacking that team. If I did a single lineup on FanDuel, who would I play at starting pitcher? Depends what teams I'm going with. That's probably the answer, because I'm inclined typically to go save some money at pitcher and try and buy some bats. I love all 3 of these guys. If you're using a cheap team in there and you want a good / more reliable pitcher, I'm happy with paying up for any of those guys. Darvish or Rodon are very interesting, and then Verlander for 98 is also very interesting. So no real issues there. Just depends on the price fit. But to your question, if I was building a single lineup on FanDuel, which I am, I would probably am going to use Christian Scott for 82 because I want to buy Astros and I want to buy another good team for bats. But it depends. Pretty nice Angels-Reds 4-man with Zach Gallen right now. Stay right where you are. If those Angels come through, I like the Reds on their side of that game in that stadium. And Zach Gallen looks tremendous. So, yep, perfectly fine. You pick the right guy, stay right where you are. No issues with it. With that in mind, guys, you're all going to be chasing Jeremiah Johnson at the top of the standings with his Angels-Reds 4-man and Zach Gallen over on FanDuel. Good luck to you catching him up there. Think he's going to take it down. Good luck out there tonight, gang. Somebody go win something. We'll be back on Monday for shows, content through the weekend. See you.